Hello there. If you enjoy falling asleep to facts like these, consider subscribing. It helps other sleepy souls find their way here. 2. Tonight, there is nothing you need to do, nothing to remember, nothing to practice, nothing to hold on to. If your eyes are already heavy, let them close. If your thoughts are still busy, that is fine too. They will settle on their own, the way dust settles in a room where no one is moving. Tonight, we are going to explore something your brain is doing right now, something it has been doing since the moment you were born, something it will continue doing long after you fall asleep. It is scanning, not for danger. Exactly. For something older, something quieter, something more fundamental. It is scanning for safety. There is a word for this neuroception. It was coined by a neuroscientist named Stephen Porges to describe the way your nervous system evaluates whether you are safe. Without your conscious mind ever being involved, you do not decide to feel safe. Your body decides for you, based on signals so subtle you may never notice them: the tone of a voice, the temperature of a room, the weight of a blanket, the stillness of the dark. So settle in. Let the pillow take the weight of your head. Let your shoulders find their resting place. And let your brain do what it does best tonight: not think, not worry, not plan, but simply receive the quiet signals that are already arriving from every direction. Signals that say you are warm, you are still, you are held, and you are safe. The facts are just quiet company, 100 of them, offered gently, about the remarkable way your brain finds safety in the world. Perhaps some will stay with you. Perhaps most will drift past like clouds. Either way, welcome, and whenever you are ready, let us begin. Your brain decides whether you are safe before you even think about it. Deep beneath the surface of your awareness, a system is running. It operates without your permission, without your attention, without your effort. This system evaluates every sound, every shadow, every shift in temperature, and it renders a verdict in milliseconds: safe or not safe. You never asked it to do this. It simply does. Researchers in affective neuroscience have mapped this process across dozens of mammalian species. The evaluation happens in subcortical regions, areas of the brain that evolved long before language, long before conscious thought. It is one of the oldest functions your nervous system performs. Imagine a lighthouse beam sweeping across a dark harbor. It does not need to be told where to shine. It simply turns, and turns, and turns, illuminating whatever is there. Your brain's safety scanner works much the same way, circling through your environment with a quiet, tireless rhythm. Perhaps you might notice, even now, that something in you is already settling. A softness behind the eyes, a looseness in the jaw. These are small signs that the scanner has already begun its work. And tonight, it is finding exactly what it hoped to find: stillness, warmth, a voice that asks nothing of you. The word neuroception was coined by Stephen Porges in 2004 to describe this unconscious scanning. Before Porges gave it a name, this process had no language. It was happening in every living creature with a nervous system. But science had no single term for it. Neuroception, the neural perception of safety and danger, filled that gap. It described something profoundly simple: your body knows things your mind has not yet figured out. Porges published his polyvagal theory, in the journal Biological Psychology, proposing that the autonomic nervous system does not merely react to threats, it actively searches for cues of safety. This was a quiet revolution, a shift from asking what makes us afraid to asking what makes us feel safe. Like a word you learn for the first time and then suddenly hear everywhere. Neuroception is something you have always experienced, but perhaps never had the language for. It is the flutter you feel in an unfamiliar room, the ease you feel in a familiar one. Perhaps you might notice that this room, wherever you are right now, has its own feeling, and perhaps that feeling is closer to ease than you expected. And in that ease, something opens. A door you did not know was closed. A permission you did not know you needed. Your nervous system has 3 states, and only one of them allows deep rest. The autonomic nervous system is not a simple on-off switch. It operates in 3 distinct modes: the freeze state, the fight or flight state, and the ventral vagal state. Each serves a purpose. Each evolved for survival. But only the ventral vagal state, the state of social engagement and calm, permits the body to fully surrender into sleep. Stephen Porges described these 3 states as a hierarchy, with the ventral vagal complex sitting at the top, the most recently evolved, the most sophisticated. When this system is active, the heart slows, the breath deepens, and the muscles of the face soften. It is the physiology of trust. Think of a bird settling onto a branch at dusk. It does not simply stop flying. Its entire body reorganizes: feathers, fluff, talon grip. Eyes grow heavy. There is a whole architecture of rest that activates, piece by piece. Perhaps you might notice your own architecture shifting now. The breath finding a slower rhythm. The body growing a little heavier against the mattress. These are not things you need to create. They are things that happen when the right state arrives. And perhaps, quietly, it is already here. The ventral vagal state, the safe state, is where healing and sleep happen. When the ventral vagal system is dominant, something remarkable occurs. The immune system strengthens. Digestion resumes. Inflammation decreases. The body, freed from the burden of vigilance, turns its energy inward toward repair, toward restoration, toward the quiet work of healing that only happens in the absence of threat. Clinical research published in Psychosomatic Medicine has demonstrated that sustained activation of the ventral vagal state is associated with improved immune function, faster wound healing, and deeper stages of sleep, safety. It turns out, is not merely a feeling, it is a biological condition. Imagine a garden after a long rain. Nothing is forced to grow. The soil is simply ready. The conditions simply right. And the seeds do what seeds have always done, they open. Perhaps you might notice a kind of opening happening in your own body right now. A softness in the chest. A warmth that seems to spread without any direction from you. This is what the ventral vagal state feels like from the inside. And it feels, perhaps, like the quietest kind of permission. Babies are born already scanning for safety signals in their mother's face. Within minutes of birth, a newborn's eyes seek a face. Not just any visual stimulus, a face. And, within that face, the eyes search for something specific, a pattern of expression that says, "You are welcome here." This is neuroception at its most primal, operating before the infant has language, before it has memory, before it even has a clear understanding of where it is. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that newborns just 9 minutes old preferentially tracked face-like patterns over scrambled patterns. The scanning begins almost immediately. The search for safety is the first project the brain undertakes. Imagine a small boat arriving at a harbor for the first time. It does not know the shape of the shore, the depth of the water, the name of the port, but it drifts toward the lighthouse anyway. Something older than knowledge pulls it there. Perhaps you might notice that your own face has softened since you began listening. The muscles around the eyes releasing, the forehead smoothing. These are the same muscles that a baby scans for, and right now, they are at rest. And in that rest, the oldest part of you recognizes something ancient, a feeling of having arrived. The amygdala can detect a potential threat in as little as 12 milliseconds faster than a blink. 12 milliseconds. That is roughly 1/80th of a second. In that sliver of time, the amygdala, a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in the temporal lobe, has already evaluated an incoming signal and triggered a response. Before you see the shadow clearly, before you hear the sound fully, before you have any conscious thought at all, neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux mapped this rapid pathway, which he called the low road, a direct route from the sensory organs to the amygdala that bypasses the cortex entirely. It is fast, imprecise, and biased toward caution. It would rather mistake a rope for a snake than a snake for a rope. Like a smoke detector in a quiet house. This system is tuned to be sensitive. It may occasionally sound for burnt toast, but that sensitivity is the price of vigilance. And tonight, the house is calm. Perhaps you might notice that nothing in your environment is triggering that alarm. No sudden sounds, no unexpected movements, just the steady, predictable rhythm of a voice speaking slowly in the dark. And the smoke detector is quiet. The house is still, and the almond-shaped sentinel in your brain has nothing to report. The brain also has a dedicated system just for recognizing safety. It is not simply the absence of danger. For a long time, scientists assumed that safety was what remained when danger was removed, like silence after a storm. But newer research has revealed something far more elegant. The brain has its own circuitry specifically designed to detect and respond to cues of safety. Safety is not a void. It is a signal. A team at the National Institute of Mental Health, led by Christian Grillen, published research showing that safety signals activate distinct neural pathways separate from those involved in threat detection. The brain does not merely stop being afraid. It actively recognizes that it is safe. Imagine the difference between a room that is empty and a room that is warm. Both are quiet, but one has something in it, a presence, a softness, a feeling of welcome. Safety is that warmth. It is not nothing. It is something. Perhaps you might notice that warmth right now. Not just the temperature of the room, but something subtler. A sense that you are in a place where nothing is being asked of you. And in that recognition, the brain does something beautiful. It relaxes its grip. It allows the body to soften. It whispers you may rest. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex activates specifically when the brain receives safety signals. There is a small region near the front and bottom of the brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. It sits at the intersection of emotion and decision-making, and it has a very particular job it lights up when the brain has determined that the current environment is safe. It is, in a sense, the brain's official stamp of approval. Functional MRI studies published in the journal Neuron have shown that this region activates not only when threats are absent, but specifically when safety cues are present: a familiar face, a calm voice, a predictable routine. It is the neural signature of reassurance. Like a night watchman writing all clear in the logbook at the end of a quiet shift, the log entry does not mean nothing happened. It means everything was checked, everything was steady, and the watch can be trusted. Perhaps you might notice that your mind is beginning to slow, not because you are forcing it, but because the systems responsible for vigilance are receiving their own version of all clear. And when the prefrontal cortex signs off, the rest of the brain follows, gently, gradually, like lights going dim in a house where everyone has already gone to bed. The vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in the body, is the main highway for safety signals. It begins at the brainstem and wanders downward through the throat, past the heart, into the lungs, through the diaphragm, and deep into the gut. The vagus nerve is so long and so meandering that its name comes from the Latin word for wanderer. It is the same root as the word vagabond. This wandering nerve carries signals between the brain and nearly every major organ. It regulates heart rate, breathing, digestion, and immune response. And it is the primary conduit through which the body communicates its state of safety or its lack to the brain above. Imagine a river that runs through an entire valley, touching every field, every village, every garden along its banks. The vagus nerve is that river, and tonight, the water is calm. Perhaps you might notice the path of your own vagus nerve right now, the subtle sensations in your throat as you breathe, the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat, the quiet stirring deep in your abdomen, all of it traveling upward along this ancient highway. And the message it carries, tonight, is simple: all is well along the road. Approximately 80% of vagus nerve signals travel upward from body to brain, not the other way around. Most people assume the brain tells the body what to do, and in many cases, that is true. But when it comes to the vagus nerve, the flow of information is overwhelmingly bottom-up. 80% of the fibers in the vagus nerve are afferent, meaning they carry signals from the organs to the brain. The body speaks. The brain listens. This discovery, confirmed through decades of neuroanatomical research, fundamentally changed how scientists understand the relationship between body and mind. The gut feeling is not a metaphor. It is a literal stream of data traveling upward through the vagus nerve, informing the brain about the state of the internal world. Like a forest full of sensors, each tree, each root, each patch of soil, sending data to a single observation tower. The tower watches, but the forest speaks first. Perhaps you might notice what your body is telling your brain right now. The weight of the blankets, the temperature of your skin, the gentle pull of gravity. All of these sensations are traveling upward, along the vagus, composing a message. And the message, tonight, is one the brain is happy to receive. The body is at rest. The organs are calm. The internal world is quiet. Heart rate variability, the tiny variations between heartbeats, is a measure of how safe your nervous system feels. Your heart does not beat like a metronome. Between each beat, there are tiny fluctuations, milliseconds of variation, that are invisible to your conscious mind, but profoundly meaningful to your nervous system. This variability, called HRV, is one of the most reliable biomarkers of autonomic state. High variability means the system is flexible, responsive, and at ease. Low variability means the system is rigid, defensive, and under strain. Research published in the journal Psychophysiology has shown that HRV is directly correlated with vagal tone, the strength and responsiveness of the vagus nerve. People with higher HRV tend to recover from stress more quickly, regulate emotions more effectively, and fall asleep more easily. Imagine the difference between a tightly wound spring and a gently swaying branch. Both have tension, but one is braced against the world and the other is moving with it. Heart rate variability is the measure of that sway. Perhaps you might notice your own heartbeat right now, not its speed, but its quality, the subtle, living rhythm of it, the way it adjusts, beat by beat, to the stillness around you. And with each slight variation, your nervous system is saying something quiet. I can adapt. I can soften. I can rest. People with higher heart rate variability tend to fall asleep faster and sleep more deeply. It turns out that the flexibility of your heartbeat predicts the quality of your sleep. Those with higher HRV, that gentle sway between beats, enter sleep more quickly, spend more time in deep, slow wave stages, and wake less frequently during the night. The heart, in its quiet variability, is rehearsing the rhythm of rest. A study published in the journal Sleep Medicine found that participants with higher baseline HRV fell asleep an average of 11 minutes faster and reported significantly better sleep quality. The body that can flex is the body that can surrender. Like a river that bends easily around stones, it does not fight the landscape. It follows the shape of the valley, and in doing so, it moves more smoothly, more quietly, more deeply. Perhaps you might notice that your body is already finding its own bends and curves tonight. The way your spine settles into the mattress, the way your hands fall open, the way the breath curves in and out without effort. And perhaps that rhythm, that gentle variability is already carrying you somewhere. Not forcefully, not urgently. Just the way a river carries a leaf toward the sea. The nervous system scans for safety approximately 4 times per second. 4 times every second. Your neuroception completes a cycle. It evaluates the environment, renders a judgment, and resets. 4 sweeps per second, 240 per minute, 14,400 per hour. All of it happening beneath the surface of your awareness. As automatic as breathing, as constant as your pulse. This frequency was estimated through research on autonomic nervous system cycling. Published in the journal Autonomic Neuroscience, the scanning never stops, not during conversation, not during meals, not during sleep, even in your dreams. The system is running. Imagine a radar screen in a quiet control room. The green line sweeping around and around, painting the same empty field with each rotation. Nothing on the horizon, nothing approaching, just the steady, reassuring hum of the sweep. Perhaps you might notice that 4 times per second is faster than you can think, faster than you can worry, faster than any anxious thought can form. By the time a worry arrives, the scanner has already checked 4 times, 8 times, 12 times and found nothing. And so the worry dissolves. Not because you dismissed it, but because the scanner already knows what the mind is still catching up to. A deer's ears rotate independently to scan for sounds of safety and danger, its own form of neuroception. If you have ever watched a deer standing at the edge of a meadow, you may have noticed something peculiar about its ears. They move independently of each other, one ear turning left while the other turns right, sweeping the auditory landscape from two directions at once. This is neuroception in physical form, visible and elegant. Bioacoustics researchers have documented that deer can rotate each ear up to 180 degrees, and they process sounds from each ear independently in the auditory cortex. This gives them a three-dimensional map of the soundscape, not just where sounds are, but what kind of sounds they are: predator or wind, footstep or falling leaf, like two satellite dishes on a hillside, each pointed at a different quadrant of the sky, gathering information from the darkness with patient, mechanical grace. Perhaps you might notice your own ears right now. Not their movement. Human ears do not rotate, but what they are receiving: the ambient sound of the room, the low, steady frequency of this voice, the absence of anything sharp or sudden. And in that gentle soundscape, even the deer, that most vigilant of creatures, might lower its ears and rest. Your pupils dilate slightly when you feel unsafe, and constrict gently when you feel secure. The eyes are not merely windows to the soul. They are barometers of the nervous system. When the sympathetic branch activates the fight or flight response, the pupils widen, letting in more light, scanning for threats. When the parasympathetic branch takes over the rest and digest response, the pupils narrow, softening the visual field, reducing alertness. Pupillometry studies, published in the journal Psychophysiology, have measured these changes with extraordinary precision. A shift of just fractions of a millimeter in pupil diameter can indicate whether the nervous system has moved toward vigilance or toward calm, like the aperture of a camera adjusting to the light. In bright, safe conditions, it narrows. There is no need to capture everything. In darkness and uncertainty, it opens wide. Perhaps you might notice, if your eyes are still open, that they feel heavy. That is not fatigue alone. It is the parasympathetic system narrowing the aperture, dimming the lights, telling the visual cortex that there is nothing more to see tonight. And if your eyes are already closed, then the adjustment has already been made. The camera has capped its lens, and the world behind your eyelids is soft and dark and wonderfully still. The middle ear muscles adjust their tension depending on your safety state. Inside your ear, two tiny muscles, the tensor tympani and the stapedius, control how sound reaches the inner ear. When these muscles are tense, they dampen low-frequency sounds and amplify high-frequency ones, tuning the ear for the sharp, sudden noises that might indicate danger. When they relax, the ear softens, broadening its range and becoming more receptive to gentle, melodic sounds. Stephen Porges described this as the neural regulation of the middle ear in his polyvagal theory. He proposed that these muscles are directly controlled by the same neural circuits that manage the vagal safe state. When you feel safe, your ears literally tune themselves differently, like a radio dial turning slowly from static to music. The same receiver, the same antenna, but a different frequency, and suddenly, instead of noise, there is melody. Perhaps you might notice the quality of what you are hearing right now, not just the words. but the texture of the sound, the softness of it, the way it seems to reach you without effort. Your middle ear muscles may already be relaxed, already tuned to the frequency of calm. And in that tuning, every sound becomes a lullaby. In the safe state, your middle ear is tuned to the frequency range of the human voice. Between 500 and 2000 Hz, that is the sweet spot. The frequency range of a calm, unhurried human voice. And when the nervous system enters the ventral vagal state, the middle ear muscles adjust to prioritize exactly this range. The ear becomes, in a sense, a listening device optimized for connection. This finding, central to Porges' polyvagal theory, explains why the sound of a calm voice is so profoundly soothing. It is not merely psychological comfort. It is a physiological match, the ear and the voice, synchronized by the same neural circuit, speaking the same language of safety. Imagine two instruments tuned to the same key. When one plays, the other resonates, not because it chooses to, but because the physics of sympathy make it inevitable. Perhaps you might notice that this voice is landing somewhere soft, not just in your mind, but in your body, in the chest, maybe, or behind the eyes. Somewhere the words dissolve into feeling, and that feeling is not something you created. It is something your middle ear invited in, the way a window invites the breeze. Dolphins sleep with one eye open and one hemisphere of the brain awake. Their neuroception never fully turns off. A dolphin cannot afford to fully sleep. It must breathe consciously, and it must watch for predators, even in the deep ocean. So it evolved a remarkable solution: unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. One half of the brain sleeps while the other remains awake. One eye closes while the other stays open, scanning the dark water. Marine biologists studying bottlenose dolphins have recorded this pattern continuously for up to 15 days, with each hemisphere alternating in 2 to 4 hour shifts. The sleeping half regenerates, while the waking half keeps the body moving and breathing. Like a lighthouse with two keepers, each taking turns at the lamp, one resting in the room below while the other watches the sea. The light never goes dark. The watch never ends. Perhaps you might notice how different your situation is tonight. You do not need to keep one eye open. You do not need to keep half your brain alert. Unlike the dolphin, you have the extraordinary luxury of full rest, both hemispheres, both eyes, the whole of you allowed to sink into sleep. And that luxury is not small. It is, perhaps, one of the quietest gifts of safety. Even single-celled organisms move toward conditions that support survival and away from those that threaten it. Long before there were brains, long before there were nervous systems, the most basic principle of neuroception was already at work. A paramecium, a creature made of a single cell, will swim toward warmth and away from toxins. It has no neurons, no synapses, no consciousness, and yet it navigates towards safety with remarkable precision. Microbiologists have documented this behavior, called chemotaxis, in organisms as simply as bacteria. The movement toward favorable conditions and away from harmful ones is perhaps the oldest behavior in the history of life on Earth, older than thought, older than feeling, older than sleep itself. Like a drop of water finding its way downhill, it has no intention, no awareness, no plan. It simply follows the path of least resistance, moving toward the low places, the quiet places, the places where it can finally come to rest. Perhaps you might notice that something in you is doing the same thing right now. Not moving. Exactly. But settling, finding the low place, the still place, the path of least resistance through the night. And that settling is older than you are. It is older than your species. It is the very first instinct any living thing ever had. The scent of lavender has been shown to shift the autonomic nervous system toward the ventral vagal safe state. Lavender, lavandula, angustifolia has been used as a calming agent for centuries. But it was only recently that science explained why. The active compound, linalool, crosses the blood-brain barrier and interacts with GABA receptors, the same receptors targeted by anti-anxiety medications. It does not merely smell pleasant. It changes the chemical environment of the brain. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Phytomedicine found that oral lavender oil reduced anxiety scores as effectively as the benzodiazepine lorazepam, without the sedative side effects. The nervous system does not just smell the lavender. It receives it as a safety signal. Imagine walking through a field in early summer, the purple rose stretching out in every direction, the warm air thick with fragrance. You did not come here to relax, but relaxation found you anyway, carried on the breeze. Perhaps you might notice whatever scent surrounds you right now. The familiar smell of your pillow, the laundry detergent on your sheets, the quiet, invisible atmosphere of your own room. And perhaps that atmosphere, whatever it is, has already been catalogued by your brain as safe, because it is yours, because you know it, because you have rested here before. Your brain can distinguish between a genuine smile and a forced one in under a second. The difference is subtle, measured in millimeters of muscle movement, but your brain detects it almost instantly. A genuine smile, called a Duchenne smile, involves not only the zygomaticus major muscle that pulls the corners of the mouth upward, but also the orbicularis oculi, the muscle that crinkles the corners of the eyes. A forced smile engages only the mouth, and your neuroception knows the difference. Research by Paul Ekman and colleagues, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, demonstrated that observers could reliably distinguish genuine from posed smiles, and that genuine smiles activated positive emotional responses in the viewer, a mirrored safety signal, passed from face to face. Like two candles in a dark room, one flickers with a living flame, and the other is painted on an image of light without warmth. You may not be able to explain the difference, but you feel it immediately. Perhaps you might notice that no one is asking you to smile right now. No social performance is required. The muscles of your face can simply be without expression, without effort. And in that absence of performance, there is a different kind of honesty, a rest that even the face deserves. Infants as young as 2 days old prefer to look at faces that are gazing directly at them, already seeking connection. 2 days, 48 hours in the world, and already the brain is searching for eyes that are looking back. This preference, documented in a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, suggests that the desire for mutual gaze is not learned. It is wired into the nervous system from the very beginning. The researchers used eye-tracking technology to show that newborns fixated longer on faces with direct gaze than on faces with averted gaze, even before they could focus clearly. even before they understood what a face was. They were drawn to the signal that someone was paying attention, that someone was there. Like a small plant leaning toward a window. It does not know what light is. It does not understand photosynthesis. But something in it reaches anyway, turns anyway, grows toward the source of what it needs. Perhaps you might notice that you, too, are being attended to right now, not by eyes, but by a voice that is here with you, present and unhurried, offering nothing but company. And perhaps that company is enough. Perhaps it has always been enough. The feeling of familiarity, recognizing a voice, a room, a scent is itself a powerful safety signal. Familiarity is not merely a cognitive label, I have been here before. It is a neurological event. When the brain encounters something it recognizes, the hippocampus fires a recognition signal that cascades through the limbic system, reaching the amygdala and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. The result is a measurable reduction in arousal, a softening of the stress response. A quiet internal nod, this is known. Studies on the mere exposure effect, first described by Robert Zajonc and replicated hundreds of times since, have shown that repeated exposure to a stimulus, any stimulus, increases affinity for it. We prefer what we know, and what we know, we tend to feel safe around. Like returning to a path you have walked many times. Your feet know the roots, the stones, the curve where the trail bends left. You do not need to watch your step. The ground is familiar, and your body remembers. Perhaps you might notice the familiarity of this moment. The texture of your bed, the weight of your blankets, the particular quality of silence that belongs only to this room, at this hour. And in that familiarity, a deep and wordless comfort, the comfort of the known. Your neuroception is active right now, scanning this room, this temperature, this sound. Even as you listen to these words, the scanner is running 4 times per second. It evaluates the signals arriving from your environment, the ambient sound, the air temperature, the pressure of the surface beneath you, the steadiness of this voice. It does not wait for you to ask. It does not require your attention. It is the oldest, most reliable program your nervous system runs. And what is it finding? No sudden changes, no unfamiliar signals, no reason to shift from rest to alertness, just the continued, uninterrupted presence of conditions it has already evaluated and approved. Like a satellite passing over a quiet landscape in the middle of the night. Fields, roads, dark houses with dark windows. Nothing moving, nothing burning, nothing out of place. Perhaps you might notice a growing heaviness in your body, a sense that you are sinking, gently, into the surface beneath you. This is not something to resist. It is something to welcome the natural consequence of a nervous system that has scanned and scanned and found only stillness. And the scanning continues. But its rhythm has become something close to a lullaby, repetitive, predictable, and wonderfully boring. And if you are lying in the dark, warm and still, the signals it is receiving are almost certainly saying safe. This is where the first cluster of facts arrives at its natural conclusion. 25 quiet observations about a system you never knew was running, a system that has been running since before you were born, since before your species walked upright, since before the first nervous system flickered to life in a shallow, warm sea. And tonight, This system, your system, has completed its evaluation. The room is dark. The air is still. The temperature is gentle. The voice is calm. There is nothing sharp, nothing sudden, nothing that requires your attention. Like a long hallway of doors, each one checked, each one locked, each one confirmed. The night guard has reached the end of the corridor and found everything in order. Perhaps you might notice that there is nothing left to check, nothing left to evaluate, nothing left to wonder about. The scanner has done its work, and its conclusion is unanimous. Safe, safe, safe. And so the body softens a little more. The mind drifts a little further. And the scanner keeps running not because it is worried, but because that is what it does. It will keep watch so that you do not have to. You can rest now. The first 25 signals have arrived. And every single one of them said the same thing. The human voice is one of the most powerful safety signals the nervous system can receive. Of all the cues your neuroception evaluates, few carry as much weight as the sound of another human being speaking calmly. The voice communicates not only meaning but state the speaker's breathing rate, emotional regulation, level of tension or ease. Your nervous system reads all of this in milliseconds, often before the words themselves register. Neuroscientist Stephen Porges has argued that the human voice evolved not only for communication, but as a social safety signal, a way of telling nearby members of the group, I am calm. I am present. There is no threat here. The muscles of the larynx and pharynx are innervated by the same vagal circuits that regulate the heart. Imagine standing at the edge of a dark forest and hearing, from somewhere within, the sound of someone humming, not a shout, not a whisper, but a calm, unhurried melody. The forest has not changed, but the humming tells you something the trees cannot. Someone is at ease in there. Perhaps you might notice the voice you are hearing right now. Its pace, its tone, the way it asks nothing of you but offers something quietly presence. Steadiness, a rhythm you can lean against. And maybe that rhythm is already doing its work, slowing something, softening something, the way a humming voice makes a dark forest feel like home. Prosody, the melody and rhythm of speech matters more to your nervous system than the words themselves. The content of language is processed in the cortex, the thinking brain. But prosody, the rise and fall, the tempo, the cadence is processed subcortically, in the same regions that evaluate safety and threat. Your nervous system hears the music of speech before it hears the meaning. And it is the music that determines whether you relax or brace. Research published in the journal Brain and Language has shown that patients with damage to cortical language areas can still detect emotional tone from prosody alone. The melody survives even when the words are lost. This suggests that prosody is older, deeper, and more fundamental to our survival than language itself. Like listening to a song in a language you have never heard. You cannot understand a single word, and yet you know whether the song is joyful or mournful, urgent or tender. The meaning is in the music. Perhaps you might notice that the words in these sentences matter less than the way they are delivered. The pauses between them, the softness of their rhythm. Your nervous system is responding not to information but to melody. And the melody tonight is slow. It is steady. It is the oldest lullaby there is one voice, speaking gently in the dark. Mothers across every culture on earth use a similar sing-song pattern when speaking to infants. In Tokyo and in Nairobi, in rural Norway, and in coastal Brazil, mothers modulate their voices in strikingly similar ways when addressing their babies. The pitch rises, the tempo slows, the vowels stretch, the rhythm becomes musical, repetitive, and soft. No one teaches this. No manual prescribes it. It emerges spontaneously, across every language and every continent. A cross-cultural study published in the journal Psychological Science recorded mothers from diverse linguistic backgrounds and found that the acoustic features of infant-directed speech were remarkably consistent worldwide. This pattern appears to be hardwired, a vocal behavior shaped by millions of years of evolution. Imagine the sound of rain falling on different rooftops: tin in one country, tile in another, thatch in a third. The material changes, but the rhythm is the same. The rain does not know the difference. Neither does the nervous system of a newborn. Perhaps you might notice that this voice, right now, carries echoes of that same ancient pattern. Not the words of a lullaby, but the shape of one, the slowness, the steadiness, the gentle rise and fall, and somewhere deep inside, a part of you that is much older than language recognizes it and responds. This pattern, called motherese, activates the ventral vagal safe state in the listener. Motherese is not simply pleasant. It is physiologically active. When an infant hears this pattern, the vagus nerve responds. Heart rate decreases. Breathing slows. The muscles of the face relax into what researchers call the social engagement configuration soft eyes. Open mouth. Oriented toward the source of the voice, the body enters the state that allows bonding, feeding, and sleep. Research using heart rate monitoring in neonatal units has demonstrated that exposure to motherese significantly reduces physiological stress markers in premature infants. The voice does not just soothe the mind. It recalibrates the entire autonomic nervous system. Like a tuning fork placed against a piano string, the fork vibrates at a specific frequency, and the string responds not because it is told to, but because it is built to resonate at that exact pitch. Motherese is the tuning fork. The infant's vagus nerve is the string. Perhaps you might notice something resonating in you right now. A vibration too subtle to name but too real to deny. A feeling of being spoken to, not at, not past, but to, and in that resonance, the vagus hums, quietly, steadily, the way it has since the very first voice you ever heard. Reading aloud to someone activates many of the same neural pathways as physical comfort. When you hear someone read aloud slowly, calmly, with no urgency, the brain responds in ways that overlap surprisingly with the neural signature of being physically held. The superior temporal gyrus processes the prosody. The insula generates a sense of warmth and presence. The default mode network quiets, releasing the grip of self-referential thought. A study at the University of Sussex found that reading reduced stress levels by 68% more than listening to music. Drinking tea, or going for a walk, and being read to, researchers suggest, amplifies this effect because it adds the safety signal of another person's calm, regulated voice. Imagine being wrapped in a blanket that is made not of fabric, but of words. Each sentence is a thread. Each paragraph is a fold. You cannot see it, but you feel it, the steady accumulation of something soft around you. Perhaps you might notice that you are being wrapped right now. not in wool or cotton, but in language, in rhythm, in the quiet, deliberate architecture of sentences spoken for no other purpose than to accompany you. And perhaps the wrapping is enough. Perhaps it has always been enough. The frequency range of a calm human voice between 500 and 2000 Hz is the range the ear is most attuned to in the safe state. This is not a coincidence. The middle ear muscles, when relaxed by the ventral vagal system, naturally attenuate low-frequency rumbles and high-frequency hisses, leaving a window of sensitivity perfectly matched to the human voice. Evolution tuned the ear to hear safety, and safety sounds like someone speaking calmly. Audiological research has confirmed that the human ear is most sensitive between 1000 and 4000 Hz, with the social engagement frequencies occupying the lower portion of this band. In the ventral vagal state, this sensitivity sharpens further. The ear becomes a precision instrument for human connection, like a telescope that, when properly focused, reveals not just stars, but the spaces between them. The calm ear hears not just words, but silences, not just meanings, but feelings, not just sounds, but the intention behind them. Perhaps you might notice how clearly you can hear right now. Not loudly, but clearly, each word arriving with a softness and a precision that seems effortless. This is your ear in its safe state, open, receptive, and tuned to the frequency of care. And in that frequency, there is nothing that needs defending against, only something worth listening to. Whales communicate across entire oceans using low-frequency sounds that may serve as safety signals for the pod. The blue whale's call can travel more than 16,000 kilometers through the deep ocean, a distance that spans from one side of the Pacific to the other. These calls, at frequencies as low as 10 to 40 Hz, are below the threshold of human hearing. But for other whales, they carry information across impossible distances. I am here. The pod is near. You are not alone. Marine bioacoustics researchers have proposed that these long-range calls function as a form of distributed safety signaling, allowing pod members separated by vast stretches of ocean to maintain a sense of connection and mutually awareness. Safety, in the whale's world, is a sound that carries across the dark. Imagine a voice so large and so low that it could fill an entire ocean basin. Not a shout, but a hum. Not a warning, but a presence. A sound that says, wherever you are, I'm still here. Perhaps you might notice that this voice, though much smaller than a whale's, carries something similar. A presence across the distance, a thread of sound that connects this moment to the next. And in the dark, a thread is sometimes all you need. A cat's purr vibrates at a frequency between 25 and 50 Hz, a range that promotes healing in bone and tissue. The domestic cat purrs at a remarkably consistent frequency, and that frequency falls within a range that biomedical engineers have identified as therapeutic. Vibrations between 20 and 50 Hz have been shown to stimulate bone density, reduce inflammation, and accelerate soft tissue repair. The cat, it seems, heals itself by humming. Research published in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America confirmed that domestic cats produce purring vibrations in this therapeutic range during both inhalation and exhalation, a continuous, self-generated healing signal. Some veterinary scientists believe this mechanism explains why cats recover from bone injuries more quickly than dogs. Imagine a small engine of healing running inside a sleeping creature. No batteries, no wires, no external power. Just the steady, self-sustaining vibration of an animal that has mastered the art of rest. Perhaps you might notice a vibration in your own body right now. Not a purr, but something quieter. The hum of your own breathing, the resonance of your own heartbeat. Your body, too, knows how to generate its own healing signal. And tonight, as you lie still, that signal is running, gently, continuously, the way a cat purrs in the dark. A slow, deliberate exhale activates the vagus nerve more effectively than almost any other voluntary action. Of all the things you can do to shift your nervous system toward the safe state, the simplest and most powerful is this: breathe out slowly. The exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which in turn slows the heart, relaxes the diaphragm, and sends a cascade of calming signals upward to the brain. It is the one voluntary action that directly interfaces with the involuntary nervous system. Cardiac vagal research, published in the journal Biological Psychology, has demonstrated that extending the exhale to roughly twice the length of the inhale produces a measurable increase in vagal tone within minutes. The body does not need to be taught to relax. It simply needs to be reminded, and the exhale is that reminder. Imagine a wave retreating slowly from the shore. The advance was quick, a rush of water up the sand. But the retreat is long, unhurried, drawn out. And in that long retreat, the beach smooths itself. The foam settles. The sand quiets. Perhaps you might notice your next exhale. Not the inhale, the exhale. The way the air leaves your body slowly, easily, as though it has nowhere else to be. That slow release is the most direct conversation you can have with your vagus nerve. And the nerve is listening. It always is. When two people breathe in sync, their nervous systems enter a state called co-regulation, a shared sense of safety. Co-regulation is what happens when two nervous systems align. Their breathing synchronizes, their heart rates come into rhythm, and a shared physiological state emerges calm, connected, and safe. This is not metaphor. It is measurable. Dual biofeedback studies have captured it in real time, watching two bodies settle into the same rhythm, as though choreographed by something invisible. Research published in scientific reports demonstrated that romantic partners who sat in close proximity spontaneously synchronized their breathing and heart rate variability, and that this synchronization was associated with reduced pain perception and increased feelings of security. Safety, it seems, is contagious. Imagine two clocks hanging on the same wall. Over time, their pendulums begin to swing in unison, not because they were set that way, but because the subtle vibrations traveling through the wall brought them into alignment. Physicists call this sympathetic resonance. Perhaps you might notice that your breathing has already begun to synchronize with something. The rhythm of this voice, maybe, or the quiet pulse of the night itself. Something in the room has set a tempo, and your body has found it. And in that shared rhythm, you are not alone. You are co-regulating with the dark. Hospital patients in rooms with windows overlooking trees have been shown to heal faster than those without a view. In 1984, architect and researcher Roger Ulrich published a landmark study comparing the recovery of surgical patients assigned to rooms with tree views versus rooms facing a brick wall. The results were striking. Patients with tree views required fewer painkillers, had shorter hospital stays, and reported higher satisfaction, all from the simple presence of leaves and branches outside their window. The study, published in the journal Science, has been cited thousands of times and helped launch the field of evidence-based healthcare design. It suggested that the human nervous system reads natural environments as inherently safe, a legacy of our evolutionary history in savannas and forests. Imagine lying in a white room, the hum of machines around you, and then turning your head to see the slow movement of oak branches against a grey sky. Nothing about your condition has changed, but something in your body shifts. The tension in the shoulders loosens. The breath comes a little easier. Perhaps you might notice, even without a window, that the images in your mind can serve a similar purpose. A tree, a garden, a slow green canopy moving in a breeze you cannot feel but somehow remember. And perhaps that memory is its own kind of window. One the nervous system knows how to look through. The sound of flowing water has been used as a calming signal in human settlements for thousands of years. From the fountains of ancient Rome to the water gardens of Mughal India, from Japanese koi ponds to Moorish courtyards in Andalusia, human beings have built the sound of moving water into their living spaces for millennia. This is not decoration. It is acoustic engineering for the nervous system. Environmental psychologists have documented that the sound of flowing water activates the parasympathetic nervous system and reduces cortisol levels. The effect is strongest when the water sound is continuous, unpredictable in its micro-patterns, and moderate in volume, mimicking a natural stream rather than a mechanical fountain. Imagine a small brook running through a mossy glade. The water makes no effort to be calming. It simply moves over stones, around roots, through shallow pools, and the sound it produces, continuous, varied, never quite repeating, is a perfect acoustic analog for the safe state. Perhaps you might notice the ambient sounds around you right now as a kind of stream, the white noise of the room, the gentle pulse of your own blood, the soft movements of air, all of it continuous, all of it unremarkable, all of it deeply, quietly soothing. And the stream does not stop. It simply flows, the way the night flows past your window. Lullabies exist in every human culture ever documented, suggesting they fulfill an evolutionary need. There is no known human society, past or present, that lacks lullabies. Ethnomusicologists have found them in Inuit communities above the Arctic Circle, in Maori settlements in New Zealand, in Bedouin camps in the Sahara, and in every urban center on every continent. The melodies differ, the words differ, but the function is universal. Slow the breath, calm the body, invite sleep. A large-scale analysis published in the journal Science examined music from nearly 100 societies and found that lullabies were the most acoustically consistent genre across cultures. Slower tempo, softer dynamics, narrower pitch range, and more repetitive structure than any other type of song. Imagine standing on a hilltop at dusk and hearing, from every valley below, a different melody drifting upward, different languages, different instruments, different harmonies. But if you listened carefully, you would notice they all share the same tempo, the same gentleness, the same invitation to let go. Perhaps you might notice that what you are hearing right now shares some of those qualities. Not a melody, exactly, but a rhythm, a tempo, a gentleness that does not need to be sung to be felt, then perhaps, in that rhythm, the oldest song in the world is still playing. The typical rhythm of a lullaby matches the resting heart rate around 60 to 80 beats per minute. This is not a coincidence. Lullabies evolved to synchronize with the listener's physiology, to match the resting heart rate and gently guide it even slower. When the external rhythm matches the internal rhythm, the nervous system recognizes a pattern of safety. Nothing is out of sync. Everything is aligned. The world and the body are moving at the same speed. Music cognition research, published in the journal PLOS One, confirmed that musical tempos near resting heart rate are perceived as more calming and are more effective at inducing relaxation than faster or slower tempos. The sweet spot is remarkably narrow, 60 to 80 beats per minute. The tempo of a heartbeat at rest. Imagine a metronome set to the speed of your own pulse. Click, click, click. Not fast enough to energize. Not slow enough to feel strange. Just the quiet, companionable rhythm of a body at peace. Perhaps you might notice that the pace of these words falls somewhere near that tempo. Not rushed, not dragging. Just steady enough to match the rhythm already happening inside your chest. And in that matching, a kind of harmony. Not musical harmony, but something deeper, the harmony of two rhythms that have found each other in the dark. Skin-to-skin contact between a parent and newborn can regulate the infant's heart rate, temperature, and breathing within minutes. Kangaroo care, the practice of placing a newborn against a parent's bare chest, has become standard in neonatal units around the world. And for good reason. Within minutes of skin contact, the infant's heart rate stabilizes, body temperature normalizes, and breathing becomes regular. The parent's body acts as an external regulator, a living thermostat and pacemaker, communicating safety through the oldest channel there is, touch. A Cochrane review of over 20 randomized controlled trials confirmed that kangaroo care reduces mortality in preterm infants, decreases the risk of infection, and promotes breastfeeding. The skin, it turns out, is not just a barrier. It is a receiver. Imagine a small bird held gently in cupped hands. It was shivering a moment ago, its tiny heart racing. But now, enveloped in warmth and stillness, it kites, not because it decided to calm down, but because the hands told it something the mind could not. Perhaps you might notice the surfaces touching your skin right now, the sheet beneath your arms, the pillowcase against your cheek, the soft pressure of fabric on skin. Each of these points of contact is a message, arriving continuously, saying the same thing. You are held, you are warm, and you are safe. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, has also been described as the safety molecule. Oxytocin does more than facilitate bonding between parents and children or between romantic partners. It actively suppresses the amygdala's threat response, reduces cortisol production, and promotes vagal tone. In other words, it does not just make you feel connected, it makes you feel safe. Connection and safety, at the molecular level, are the same thing. Research published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology demonstrated that intranasal oxytocin administration reduced amygdala reactivity to threatening stimuli by nearly 40%. The molecule literally dampens the brain's alarm system, replacing vigilance with trust. Imagine a warm liquid spreading slowly through a glass of cold water. The cold does not disappear. It is simply displaced, gently, by something warmer. Oxytocin moves through the brain in much the same way, not erasing fear, but gradually replacing it with calm. Perhaps you might notice a warmth that seems to come from nowhere in particular, a softness in the chest, a looseness in the belly. These may be the quiet signatures of oxytocin, released by the act of being still, being warm, being spoken to gently. And in that warmth, the alarm system stands down, not because the threat has been defeated, but because it was never really there. Eye contact between a dog and its owner increases oxytocin levels in both species, a shared loop of trust. When a dog gazes into its owner's eyes, something remarkable happens in both brains. Oxytocin levels rise not just in the human, but in the dog as well. This mutual oxytocin loop, documented in a study published in the journal Science, mirrors the bonding mechanism between human parents and their infants. Over thousands of years of domestication, dogs evolved the ability to hijack the human bonding system through eye contact. The researchers found that dogs who gazed longer at their owners triggered a 300% increase in owner oxytocin levels. And the owner's behavioral responses, in turn, elevated the dog's oxytocin, a feedback loop of trust, running between two species, powered by nothing more than a steady gaze. Imagine two mirrors facing each other, each reflecting the other's light back and forth, growing brighter with each pass. That is the oxytocin loop, a cycle of trust that amplifies itself simply by continuing. Perhaps you might notice that trust, too, can build this way, not through grand gestures, but through small, repeated signals, a voice returning, a presence sustained, a quiet confirmation, again and again, that someone is here. And tonight, the loop is running, quietly, gently, between you and the stillness around you. Even imagining a safe person or a safe place can measurably shift the nervous system toward the ventral vagal state. You do not need the actual presence of safety to activate the safety response. The brain cannot always distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one, and this is a feature, not a flaw. When you imagine a person who makes you feel safe, or a place where you have felt profoundly at ease, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex activates, the amygdala quiets, and the vagus nerve responds as though the safety were real. Clinical studies using guided imagery in post-traumatic stress recovery have shown measurable reductions in heart rate, cortisol, and self-reported anxiety when participants imagined safe environments. The nervous system accepts the image as evidence. Imagine, for a moment, a place where you have felt completely at ease. A room, a garden, a stretch of coastline. You do not need to name it or describe it. Just let it exist in your mind, quietly, the way a painting hangs on a wall still, silent and present. Perhaps you might notice that the image changes something, a slight easing in the chest, a deeper breath, a warmth that was not there a moment ago. Your nervous system has received the image and rendered its verdict safe. And the image does not need to be perfect. It does not even need to be real. It only needs to be yours. The phrase, "I am safe," repeated silently, has been shown in clinical studies to lower cortisol levels. Words, even unspoken ones, have physiological power. When participants in a clinical trial were asked to silently repeat the phrase "I am safe" for several minutes, their cortisol levels dropped significantly compared to a control group that repeated a neutral phrase. The inner voice, it seems, speaks directly to the stress response system. This research, published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology, builds on decades of work in cognitive, behavioral, and somatic therapies that use self-directed language to modulate autonomic arousal. The words do not need to be believed to be effective. They simply need to be repeated slowly, gently, like a mantra without urgency. Imagine writing the same word on a steamed mirror, over and over. Each time it fades. You write it again. The word does not force the mirror to stay clear, but the repetition creates a rhythm, and the rhythm becomes a kind of clearing. Perhaps you might try it now, silently, without effort. I am safe, not as a declaration, not as a command, just as a quiet observation, a whisper from the thinking mind to the feeling body. I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. And whether or not you believe it, something in you softens, because the body does not need proof. It needs permission. The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku forest bathing reduces cortisol and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Shinrin-yoku, which translates literally as forest bath, was introduced as a public health concept in Japan in 1982. It does not involve exercise or exertion. It simply involves being in a forest, walking slowly, breathing naturally, and allowing the senses to absorb the environment. The trees, the air, the light, the sounds, each element is a safety signal. A meta-analysis published in Environmental Health and Preventive Medicine reviewed 24 studies and found consistent reductions in cortisol, blood pressure, and sympathetic nervous system activity after forest bathing sessions. Phytoncides, volatile organic compounds released by trees, were identified as one possible mechanism, acting on the immune system and the autonomic nervous system simultaneously. Imagine walking barefoot on a forest floor, the earth cool and damp beneath your feet, the canopy filtering the light into soft green patterns on the ground. You are not going anywhere. You are simply there, and being there is enough. Perhaps you might notice that the room around you, though it is not a forest, has its own kind of sheltering. The ceiling above you like a canopy, the walls around you like the trunks of ancient trees, the darkness like the deep shade of a forest floor. And in that sheltering, the same chemistry unfolds. Cortisol falls, the parasympathetic system rises, the body bathes in the quiet of the night. The sound of a heartbeat is the very first safety signal every human being ever receives. Before you had eyes to see, before you had skin to feel, before your nervous system could process a single conscious thought, you heard a heartbeat, your mother's heartbeat, transmitted through amniotic fluid, was the first rhythmic pattern your auditory system ever processed. It was the first proof of life outside yourself, the first signal that you were not alone. Fetal audiology research has shown that the developing ear becomes responsive to sound by approximately 23 weeks of gestation. And the most consistent sound in the uterine environment is the maternal heartbeat, a low-frequency rhythm averaging 70 to 80 beats per minute. This rhythm becomes the template against which all future safety signals are measured. Imagine a drum beating in a dark room before you knew what a room was. Before you knew what darkness was, before you knew what you were, there was only the beat. And the beat meant everything is continuing. Everything is intact. Perhaps you might notice your own heartbeat right now. Not its speed, but its presence. The fact that it is there, steady and unasked for, doing what it has done since before you were born. And in that beat, the oldest safety signal still plays, the first one you ever heard, the one that said you are alive and you are held. Premature infants exposed to recorded heartbeat sounds gain weight faster and leave the hospital sooner. In neonatal intensive care units around the world, a simple intervention has shown remarkable results, playing the sound of a heartbeat near premature infants. Those exposed to rhythmic heartbeat sounds gained weight more quickly, showed more stable vital signs, and were discharged earlier than those in standard care. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Pediatrics found that preterm infants exposed to maternal heartbeat sounds had significantly better feeding tolerance and fewer episodes of apnea. The heartbeat acted as an external anchor, a replacement for the sound that had been lost too soon when the infant left the womb. Imagine a tiny boat tossed by the waves, and then the sound of a steady bell from the harbor, calling it home. The boat does not need to understand the bell. It only needs to hear it. And the hearing is enough to orient, to steady, to bring it safely in. Perhaps you might notice the steadiness of the sounds around you right now, the reliability of them, the way nothing in your environment is changing suddenly or unpredictably. This constancy is its own heartbeat, not a sound, but a quality of the night, and that quality is anchoring you, gently, the way a harbor bell anchors a boat it cannot see. Your breathing rate right now is likely slower than it was when you first began listening. This is not something you planned. It is not something you practiced. It happened on its own, a gradual, involuntary deceleration managed by the same autonomic systems we have been exploring for the past several minutes. Your brainstem noticed the calm. Your vagus nerve carried the message. Your respiratory center adjusted the rhythm. Physiological monitoring studies have shown that sustained exposure to calm auditory stimuli such as a slow, steady voice can reduce respiratory rate by 2 to 4 breaths per minute within 15 to 20 minutes. The body does not wait for the mind's permission. It recalibrates on its own. Imagine a pendulum that has been swinging fast, and then the air around it thickens slightly, not enough to stop it, but enough to slow it. The pendulum does not resist. It adjusts. It finds a new, slower arc. And the new arc feels not like restriction but like release. Perhaps you might notice your own breathing now. The length of the inhale, the even longer exhale, the pause between them, that quiet, floating moment where nothing at all is happening. And in that pause, a small proof your nervous system trusts this moment. It has slowed because it can. It has softened because it is safe. That slowing is not something you chose. It is something your nervous system decided because it feels safe enough to slow. This is perhaps the most remarkable thing about the relaxation response. It cannot be forced. You cannot command your breathing to slow in the same way you cannot command yourself to fall asleep. Both are surrenders. And surrenders, by definition, are involuntary. They happen when the conditions are right, and the conditions are right when the nervous system has gathered enough evidence of safety. Research in autonomic psychophysiology has established that the shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance is not a conscious decision, but an emergent property of the system, a threshold that, once reached, triggers a cascade of physiological changes. You do not decide to relax. Relaxation decides to arrive. Imagine a fruit ripening on a branch. You cannot make it ripen faster by staring at it. You can only create the conditions: sunlight, water, warmth, and then wait. The ripening happens on its own, at its own pace, when the moment is right. Perhaps you might notice that you are not trying to relax right now, and perhaps that is why it is working. The trying has stopped. The conditions have been met, and the body is doing what it was always going to do: ripening, softening, letting go. And the slowing itself becomes a signal. The body confirming what the brain already knows: this is safe. The circle closes here. At the end of the second cluster, the brain detects safety and sends a signal to slow. The body slows and sends a signal back. The slowing confirms the safety, and the confirmed safety deepens the slowing. It is a feedback loop, a spiral of calm, turning inward, growing quieter with each revolution. This phenomenon, known in systems theory as positive feedback, explains why relaxation, once it begins, tends to deepen on its own. Each physiological change reinforces the next. Slower breathing leads to lower heart rate. Lower heart rate leads to increased vagal tone. Increased vagal tone leads to deeper relaxation. And deeper relaxation leads to slower breathing. The spiral turns. Imagine a stone dropped into still water. The ripples move outward in expanding circles, each one wider and slower than the last. And as they reach the edges of the pool, they return quieter, gentler, folding back into the center where the stone has already disappeared. Perhaps you might notice that you are somewhere in that spiral now, not at the beginning, where the stone first hit the water, but further out, where the ripples are wide and slow and almost still. 25 more signals have arrived, and each one confirmed what the body already knew. The language of safety has been spoken, and you have heard every word. Darkness is not the absence of safety. It is one of the oldest safety signals the body knows. For most of human history, darkness meant one thing: it is time to stop, time to gather close, time to seek shelter, time to let the body do what it cannot do in the light. The fear of darkness is learned, but the body's response to darkness, the slowing of the heart, the release of melatonin, the softening of the muscles, is ancient and automatic. Chronobiology research has demonstrated that the onset of darkness triggers a cascade of physiological changes mediated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock. These changes are not optional. They are hardwired into the circadian system, older than language, older than culture, older than fear itself. Imagine the moment just after sunset on a savanna 100,000 years ago. The sky deepens from orange to violet to black, and as the darkness arrives, the body begins its nightly transformation, not because it is afraid, but because it is ready. Perhaps you might notice the darkness around you right now, not as emptiness, but as a signal your body has been reading since before you were born. A signal that says the day is finished, the work is done. And in the darkness, a kind of tenderness, the world turning its face away, so you can rest without being watched. The pineal gland begins producing melatonin only when it receives the signal that darkness has arrived. Deep inside the brain, smaller than a grain of rice. The pineal gland waits for one specific cue, the absence of light. When the retina stops detecting blue wavelength photons, the signal travels through the retinohypothalamic tract to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and from there to the pineal gland. Only then does melatonin begin to flow a quiet chemical tide, rising slowly in the blood. Research published in the Journal of Biological Rhythms has mapped this pathway with precision, showing that melatonin production begins approximately 2 hours after the onset of darkness and peaks in the middle of the night. The timing is consistent across cultures, climates, and continents. Darkness is the key, and the pineal gland is the lock. Imagine a flower that blooms only at night. All day it waits, petals closed, patient and still. And then, when the last light fades, it opens slowly, silently, as though the darkness itself were sunlight of a different kind. Perhaps you might notice that something in you is opening. 2. A heaviness in the eyelids, a warmth behind the forehead. These may be the quiet signatures of melatonin beginning its work. And you do not need to help it. You do not need to encourage it. You only need to be in the dark, and the flower opens on its own. Melatonin does not merely cause sleepiness. It tells every cell in the body that night has come and rest is permitted. Melatonin is not a sleeping pill. It is a messenger. When it enters the bloodstream, it binds to receptors in nearly every tissue in the body: the brain, the heart, the gut, the immune cells, the skin. Its message is not sleep now. Its message is night has arrived. The difference is profound. Sleep is a consequence of the message, not the message itself. Endocrinological research has shown that melatonin modulates immune function, reduces core body temperature, lowers blood pressure, and shifts the balance of the autonomic nervous system toward parasympathetic dominance. It is a whole-body signal, coordinating the transition from day to night at every level of biological organization. Imagine a town crier walking through a village at dusk, knocking on every door with the same gentle message: the day is over. The baker stops baking. The blacksmith banks the fire. The children come inside, not because they are told to sleep, but because the rhythm of the village has shifted, and everything slows in sympathy. Perhaps you might notice your body receiving that message right now. The slight cooling of your skin, the heaviness in your limbs, the way even your thoughts seem to move more slowly, as though the words themselves have decided to rest. And the message continues, carried by the quiet chemistry of the dark. Night has come. Rest is permitted. All of you is welcome to slow down. Humans have sought enclosed sleeping spaces for hundreds of thousands of years: caves, hidds, nests of leaves. Archaeological evidence from sites across Africa, Europe, and Asia reveals a consistent pattern wherever early humans slept. They sought enclosure. The caves of Blombos in South Africa, the rock shelters of Lascaux in France, the leaf-lined sleeping hollows found at Sibudu Cave all suggest a deep, recurring preference for bounded spaces during sleep. Paleoanthropologists believe this preference is not merely practical, but neurological. Enclosed spaces reduce the number of directions from which a threat can approach, allowing the nervous system to lower its scanning threshold and enter deeper states of rest. The walls are not just physical barriers, they are safety signals. Imagine crawling into a hollow beneath a fallen tree, the bark smooth and dry above you, the leaves soft beneath. The opening is just wide enough for one. The world outside continues. But in here, the space is yours alone, small, warm, and complete. Perhaps you might notice the enclosure around you right now. The walls of your room, the edges of your bed, the boundary between where you are and where the world begins. These are not constraints. They are the architecture of safety. And within that architecture, the nervous system does what it has done for 100,000 years. It relaxes. It trusts. It lets the walls keep watch. The instinct to sleep in enclosed spaces is shared by nearly every mammal on Earth. Dogs circle before lying down, a vestige of pressing down grass to create a nest. Cats seek out boxes, drawers, and tight spaces. Bears return to the same dens year after year. Rabbits dig burrows. Squirrels build drays of woven twigs high in the trees. Across the entire class Mammalia, the pattern holds to sleep is to seek enclosure. Comparative ethology studies have documented this behavior in over 200 mammalian species. From the smallest shrews to the largest elephants, even elephants, who sleep standing or lying in the open, preferentially choose locations sheltered by trees or rock formations. The instinct runs deeper than anatomy. It runs through the nervous system itself. Imagine the earth at night, seen from above, and in every forest, every prairie, every mountain range, millions of small creatures tucked into millions of small spaces, each one enclosed, each one warm, each one safe. A planet-wide architecture of rest, built by instinct and maintained by the oldest wisdom the body knows. Perhaps you might notice that you, too, are tucked in right now, enclosed by blankets, by walls, by the quiet geometry of your bed. You are part of that architecture, one of millions of mammals, resting in your nest tonight. And in that belonging, a comfort that stretches back to the first creature that ever curled up in the dark and closed its eyes. Weighted blankets activate deep pressure touch receptors, the same receptors activated by a firm, steady hug. Deep pressure touch, the sensation of evenly distributed weight across the body, stimulates the release of serotonin and dopamine while reducing cortisol. This is the same mechanism behind the calming effect of a hug, a swaddle, or a compression vest. The body interprets sustained, gentle pressure as a signal of containment and safety. Occupational therapy research, originally developed for individuals with sensory processing differences, has shown that deep pressure touch activates the parasympathetic nervous system and reduces sympathetic arousal. A study in the Journal of Sleep Medicine and Disorders found that participants using weighted blankets reported a 63% decrease in anxiety and a 33% increase in sleep quality. Imagine being held not tightly, but steadily, the way the earth holds you with gravity, the way snow holds a landscape in silence, not restricting, but cradling, a pressure that says, I have you. You can let go. Perhaps you might notice the weight of whatever covers you right now. The blanket, the sheet, the gentle pressure on your chest and legs. That weight is speaking to your nervous system in a language older than words. And the message is always the same. You are contained. You are held. And you are safe. A study in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found that weighted blankets improved sleep quality in 80% of participants. 80%. 4 out of every 5 people who slept under a weighted blanket, typically around 10% of their body weight, reported measurable improvements in how quickly they fell asleep, how long they stayed asleep, and how rested they felt upon waking. The effect was consistent across age groups, genders, and baseline anxiety levels. The study controlled for placebo by comparing weighted blankets to light blankets of the same size and texture. The difference was not in the feel of the fabric, but in the weight itself, the steady, even pressure that the body interprets as a safety signal from the outside world. Imagine a dock in a harbor, where a boat is tied with a single heavy rope. The rope does not pull the boat. It simply holds it steady against the tide. Without the rope, the boat drifts. With it, the boat rests gently rocking, but going nowhere. Perhaps you might notice a kind of anchoring in your own body right now. The weight of the covers, the pull of gravity, the sense that you are held in place, not by force, but by the quiet, steady presence of something heavier than air. And in that anchoring, the drifting stops. The body stills, and sleep becomes not a destination but a harbor you have already reached. The temperature of your skin drops slightly as you begin to fall asleep, and a cool room helps this natural process. As the body prepares for sleep, the blood vessels in the hands and feet dilate, releasing heat from the core to the extremities and into the surrounding air. This process, called peripheral vasodilation, lowers core body temperature by approximately 1 degree Celsius, a drop that signals the brain to initiate sleep onset. Thermoregulation research, published in the journal Sleep, has confirmed that sleeping in a cool environment facilitates this natural heat loss and accelerates the transition to sleep. Rooms that are too warm prevent the core temperature from dropping, keeping the brain in a state of mild alertness. Imagine a warm stone placed beside a cool stream. Slowly, the heat radiates outward, and the stone cools to match its surroundings. Nothing is taken from the stone. It simply finds equilibrium, the temperature at which it and the world are the same. Perhaps you might notice the temperature of your own skin right now, the slight coolness of your fingertips, the warmth beneath the blankets. Your body is balancing, adjusting, finding its own equilibrium with the night. And in that balance, a readiness. The body saying, in its own chemical language, the conditions are right. We can begin. The ideal sleeping temperature for most humans is between 15 and 19 degrees Celsius. This narrow range, roughly 60 to 66 degrees Fahrenheit, represents the thermal sweet spot for sleep onset and maintenance. Within this window, the body can most efficiently release core heat. The thermoregulatory system operates with minimal effort, and the brain can transition smoothly through the stages of sleep. The National Sleep Foundation, based on a synthesis of sleep research, recommends keeping bedroom temperature within this range for optimal sleep quality. Deviations as small as 2 to 3 degrees in either direction have been shown to increase sleep latency and reduce time spent in deep, restorative sleep stages. Imagine a cocoon woven from cool evening air, not cold enough to shiver, not warm enough to stir. Just the precise temperature at which the body can forget it has a temperature at all. The kind of air that asks nothing of the skin. Perhaps you might notice the air around you right now. Its weight, its stillness, the way it touches your face and your hands with a gentle, neutral presence. Neither too warm nor too cold. Simply there. And in that quiet neutrality, the body stops adjusting, the thermostat turns off, and the effort of being awake becomes, for just a moment, optional. See tactile afferents, specialized nerve fibers in the skin, respond specifically to gentle, slow touch at skin temperature. These nerve fibers, discovered relatively recently, are unlike ordinary touch receptors. They do not respond to sharp pressure, vibration, or temperature extremes. They respond exclusively to the kind of touch that characterizes caregiving's slow, gentle stroking at approximately 3 to 10 centimeters per second, delivered at the temperature of human skin. They are, in essence, the neural hardware for tenderness. Research by neuroscientist Hakan Olausson, published in the journal Nature Neuroscience, demonstrated that C-tactile afferents project directly to the insular cortex, the brain region responsible for interoception and emotional awareness, rather than to the somatosensory cortex, which processes ordinary touch. This means that gentle touch is processed as an emotion, not a sensation. Imagine a hand resting on a sleeping child's back, not moving quickly, not pressing firmly, but simply there, warm and slow. The child does not analyze the touch. The child feels safe. And that feeling is carried not through the thinking brain, but through a dedicated channel that translates touch directly into trust. Perhaps you might notice the fabric against your skin right now, the softness of it, the way it rests against you without pressing, without pulling. Your C-tactile afferents are reading that contact, and what they are reading is gentleness. And gentleness, to these fibers, means only one thing: you are cared for. These fibers connect directly to the insular cortex, the region of the brain that generates feelings of safety and belonging. The insular cortex is often called the brain's internal compass. It monitors the state of the body heart rate, breathing, gut sensations, muscle tension, and generates the subjective feeling of how I am right now. When C-tactile afferents send their signals here, they add something to the internal landscape, the feeling of being touched with care, and that feeling shifts the entire internal compass towards safety. Functional imaging studies have shown that C-tactile stimulation activates the posterior insular and the orbitofrontal cortex regions associated with reward, social bonding, and the regulation of emotional distress. Gentle touch does not merely feel nice. It rewires the brain's assessment of the current moment. Imagine a compass that does not point north, but points toward home. And with each gentle touch, the needle swings a little closer, not toward a place, exactly, but toward a feeling, the feeling of being where you belong. Perhaps you might notice a quietness in your body right now, not the quietness of empty space, but the quietness of something settled, something that has found its orientation. The internal compass is pointing, and what it points toward is peace. And in that peace, the insular cortex has nothing to report, but this all is well inside. The Japanese concept of ame describes the deep comfort of trusting someone completely, of allowing yourself to be held. Ame has no direct English translation. It describes the sweetness of dependence, the feeling of letting go into someone else's care without shame or self-consciousness. Psychoanalyst Takeo Doi introduced the concept to Western audiences in his 1971 book, The Anatomy of Dependence, arguing that this feeling is not weakness but a fundamental human need. Cross-cultural psychology research has since explored AME as a key component of attachment security, the felt sense that one can be vulnerable without consequence. In the amaze state, the nervous system is not merely safe, it is surrendered. It has handed over the task of vigilance to someone trusted, and in doing so, it has freed itself for rest. Imagine falling backward into outstretched arms. The moment before you fall, there is a flicker of doubt, and then the arms catch you, and the doubt dissolves into something warmer. That warmth is ame, the sweetness of being caught. Perhaps you might notice that tonight. The surface beneath you is those arms, the bed, the pillow, the quiet structure of the room, all of it catching you, not asking you to stand, not asking you to balance, simply holding. And in that holding, the sweetness of letting go, the deep, quiet comfort of being carried by something you trust. Swaddling a newborn mimics the gentle pressure of the womb the first enclosed, safe space any human ever knows. For 9 months, the developing fetus is contained, surrounded on all sides by warm fluid, gentle pressure, and the constant rhythm of the maternal heartbeat. When birth suddenly removes that containment, the nervous system can become overwhelmed by the openness of the world. Swaddling, wrapping the infant snugly in a soft cloth, recreates the pressure and enclosure of the womb, and the infant calms almost immediately. Pediatric research published in the journal Pediatrics has shown that swaddled newborns startle less frequently, sleep more continuously, and show lower cortisol levels than unswaddled infants. The swaddle acts as an external nervous system regulator, a wearable safety signal. Imagine being wrapped in something soft and steady, the way a letter is placed inside an envelope, not crushed, not restricted, but enclosed, fitted, held within edges that define a small, safe space. Perhaps you might notice that your bed is its own kind of swaddle tonight. The sheets gathered around you, the blankets folded close, the edges of the mattress marking the boundary of a space that is entirely yours. And within that space, the same comfort a newborn feels when wrapped for the first time. The comfort of being contained, the comfort of edges, the comfort of enough. Birds build nests not only for warmth, but for the geometry of enclosure walls on all sides. Open sky above. A bird's nest is a work of engineering, but its function is not merely thermal insulation. The circular walls create a visual boundary that reduces the number of directions from which the bird must scan for threats. The open top preserves an escape route, while the sides create the illusion of a room small, defined, and enclosed. The geometry is deliberate, even if the bird does not know why. Ornithological research has shown that nest shape and depth vary predictably. With predation, pressure, species in high-risk environments build deeper, more enclosed nests. The architecture of the nest is, in effect, a physical expression of the bird's need for safety. Imagine a small cup made of woven grass, perched in the crook of a branch. Inside, a single bird sits, feathers puffed, eyes half closed. The walls are barely an inch high, but they are enough. They define a world within a world, a tiny kingdom of warmth and stillness. Perhaps you might notice the geometry of your own nest tonight. The walls of the room, the frame of the bed, the way the blankets curl around you, creating a shape that is yours alone. And in that shape, the same ancient logic holds. Walls mean shelter, Shelter means safety. Safety means sleep. The Scandinavian practice of hygge is built around warmth, soft light, and the deliberate creation of cozy shelter. Hygge, pronounced roughly hygge, is a Danish and Norwegian concept that describes the art of creating intimacy and comfort. It involves candles, blankets, warm drinks, and close company. But at its core, hygge is not about objects. It is about the feeling of being sheltered, the deliberate construction of an environment that tells the nervous system, you can stop scanning now. Everything here is gentle. Cultural psychologists have linked hygge to the remarkably high well-being scores reported in Scandinavian countries. Despite their long, dark winters, the practice, they suggest, is a form of environmental self-regulation, a way of engineering safety signals into the physical world. Imagine a small room lit only by candlelight, a blanket across your knees, a mug of something warm between your hands. The window is dark, the world outside is cold, but in here, everything is soft. Everything is chosen. Everything is arranged to say, be at ease. Perhaps you might notice that your room, right now, has its own version of hygge. The softness of the pillow, the darkness that is not empty but full, the stillness that is not silence but peace. And in that peace, the Scandinavian wisdom holds. You do not need to wait for safety to arrive. You can build it. And tonight, it has already been built. The softness of your pillow is read by your nervous system as a tactile safety signal, even pressure. No sharp edges. No threat. The somatosensory cortex maps the surface your head rests on with remarkable detail. It notes the pressure distribution, the texture, the temperature, the absence of points or edges. When all of these inputs indicate softness and uniformity, the brain reduces its alertness to tactile stimuli, a process called sensory gating. The pillow, in effect, tells the brain, nothing here requires your attention. Research in haptic neuroscience has shown that uniform, soft surfaces reduce sensory cortex activation compared to irregular or hard surfaces. The brain processes the pillow not as an object, but as an environment, one that is overwhelmingly safe. Imagine laying your cheek on a cloud, not a real cloud, which would be cold and wet, but the cloud of childhood imagination, soft beyond measure, yielding to the shape of your face, asking nothing in return. Perhaps you might notice the pillow beneath your head right now, the way it has taken your shape, the way it holds without gripping, the way it makes no demand, sets no boundary, simply receives the weight of you. And in that receiving, a tenderness, the tenderness of a world that has made a place for your head to rest. The familiarity of your own bed activates recognition circuits the brain, confirming I have been safe here before. Every time you lie in your own bed and fall asleep without incident, the hippocampus records that experience. It files it alongside thousands of other nights in the same position, the same room, the same bed. And when you return the next night, the hippocampus retrieves those records and sends a signal to the amygdala. This place has a history of safety. You can relax. Neuroscientific research on contextual fear conditioning and its inverse, contextual safety learning, has shown that the hippocampus is essential for encoding place-based safety. Familiar environments that have been associated with sleep and rest become, over time, powerful, conditioned safety cues. Imagine opening a book to a page you have read 100 times. The words are familiar. The story is known. There is no suspense, no tension, no surprise. And in that familiarity, a deep relaxation, the kind that only comes from knowing what happens next. Perhaps you might notice how well you know this bed. The dip in the mattress, the particular way the blankets fold, the angle of the light, or the absence of it. This is a story your body has read 1,000 times. And tonight, the ending is the same as it always is. You lie down, you breathe, and slowly, the page turns itself. The first night effect, sleeping poorly in a new environment, is caused by one hemisphere of the brain staying partially alert. When you sleep in an unfamiliar place, a hotel, a friend's house, a new apartment, one hemisphere of the brain remains in a lighter stage of sleep, maintaining a higher level of sensory vigilance. This asymmetric sleep, documented through EEG recordings, is the brain's way of keeping one eye open in an unknown environment. Researchers at Brown University published this finding in the journal Current Biology, showing that the left hemisphere exhibits significantly more sensitivity to deviant sounds during the first night in a new location. By the second night, the asymmetry disappears. The brain has decided the environment is safe. Imagine a soldier sleeping with one hand on a weapon, not because there is danger, but because the landscape is unfamiliar. The readiness is not paranoia. It is prudence, and it lifts the moment the territory is known. Perhaps you might notice that no such readiness is present tonight. You are in your place, your bed, your room, your territory. Both hemispheres of your brain can stand down. Both can soften into the same depth of sleep. And that symmetry, that equal, balanced rest is the signature of home. Once the brain confirms the new space is safe, the first night effect fades. Usually by the second night, the speed of this adaptation reveals something beautiful about the nervous system it wants to trust. It is not designed for permanent vigilance. It is designed to evaluate, learn, and relax. One night of scanning is usually enough. By the second night, the hippocampus has filed the new environment as known. The amygdala has lowered its threshold, and sleep returns to its full, bilateral depth. Longitudinal sleep studies have confirmed that the first night effect is almost universally resolved by the second or third night, with some individuals adapting within a single sleep cycle. The brain's default, when given half a chance, is to find safety. Imagine a cat placed in a new room. For the first hour, it crouches, ears forward, scanning every corner. By the second hour, it is exploring. By the third, it is curled on the warmest surface, eyes closed, purring. The transition from vigilance to trust happened not because the room changed, but because the cat's nervous system found what it was looking for. Perhaps you might notice that your own nervous system found what it was looking for a long time ago in this room. The scanning is over. The adaptation is complete. The territory is known. And tonight, the trust is absolute. The smell of your own home is a quiet but powerful safety signal, even though you have long since become nose-blind to it. Every home has a unique olfactory signature, a blend of cooking residues, cleaning products, building materials, fabric, skin cells, and the particular microbiome of its inhabitants. You stopped consciously smelling it years ago, a phenomenon called olfactory adaptation. But your limbic system, the emotional brain, never stopped processing it. Research in chemical senses has shown that familiar home odors reduce stress responses and increase subjective feelings of comfort. Even when participants cannot consciously identify the scent, the amygdala recognizes the olfactory fingerprint and files it alongside the memory of every safe night spent within those walls. Imagine an invisible blanket made of scent. You cannot see it, cannot feel it, cannot describe it. But the moment you walk through your door, it wraps around you, and something in your shoulders drops. Something in your jaw unclenches. You are home. Perhaps you might notice that this invisible blanket is around you right now. You cannot smell it, but your limbic system can, and it is responding with the same quiet ease it has offered every night you have slept in this room. And that ease, invisible as it is one of the most reliable safety signals your nervous system ever receives. Astronauts report that the hardest adjustment in space is not weightlessness, it is the absence of familiar safety cues. Floating is disorienting, but what astronauts describe as most unsettling is subtler than gravity. It is the absence of familiar sounds, smells, and textures. No birdsong, no wind, no rain on a window, no pillow with the right amount of give. The International Space Station hums with machinery, but the hum carries no emotional information. The nervous system scans and finds no safety cues it recognizes. NASA sleep research has documented that astronauts in orbit average only about 6 hours of sleep per night, compared to 8 on Earth. Despite strict sleep schedules and light management protocols, the deficit is attributed largely to the absence of environmental safety signals that the body has relied upon since infancy. Imagine floating in a room that is neither warm nor cold, neither dark nor light, neither quiet nor loud, a room that is profoundly, unsettlingly neutral. The body does not know what to do with neutrality. It needs signals. It needs cues. It needs the world to say something. Perhaps you might notice how richly your environment is speaking to you right now. The weight of gravity, the texture of your pillow, the temperature of the air, the darkness, the stillness. Every one of these is a signal the astronaut misses. And every one of them is here, present, abundant, and free. The wealth of the grounded world. Patients in hospitals who are given a piece of clothing belonging to a loved one show measurably lower stress hormones. A worn shirt, a scarf, a pillowcase from home. These objects carry the olfactory signature of someone the patient loves and trusts. And when placed near the patient, particularly during sleep, they reduce cortisol levels, lower heart rate, and improve self-reported feelings of comfort. The body reads the scent as a proxy for the person and responds accordingly. A study published in the journal Psychological Science found that participants who slept with a partner's worn shirt showed significantly reduced cortisol levels compared to those who slept with a clean or stranger-worn shirt. The effect was strongest when the participant was unaware of whose shirt it was. The response was entirely unconscious. Imagine carrying someone's warmth in the threads of their clothing, not metaphorically, but chemically. Their skin oils, their unique microbiome, their specific molecular signature, all woven into the fabric, invisible but potent. And the nervous system, reading these molecules, concludes this person is near, I am safe. Perhaps you might notice the scent of your own bed linens, the familiar smell of you, the molecular signature of your own safety, accumulated over many nights. And in that scent, a quiet recognition: this is mine, this is known, this is home. The color blue has been shown to lower heart rate and blood pressure more reliably than any other color. Chromotherapy research, the study of how color affects physiology, has consistently identified blue as the most calming color in the visible spectrum. Exposure to blue light and blue environments is associated with reduced heart rate, lower blood pressure, and decreased self-reported anxiety. The effect is robust across cultures and age groups. A study published in the journal Color Research and Application found that participants in blue-lit rooms showed significantly greater parasympathetic activation than those in red, green, or white-lit rooms. The researchers hypothesized that blue's calming effect may be evolutionary, associated with clear skies and calm water, both environmental signals of safety and stability. Imagine the blue of a clear sky just before dusk, not the bright blue of midday, but the deep, quiet blue that comes when the sun has dropped below the horizon and the sky holds its last breath of color. That blue asks nothing. It simply is. And in its presence, something in the chest loosens. Perhaps you might notice the darkness around you as a kind of deep blue, not the darkness of absence, but the darkness of depth, the blue-black of a night sky, vast and gentle and infinitely calm. And in that depth, the heart slows, the blood quiets, the blue does its ancient work. The gentle sounds of a house at night, the hum of a refrigerator, the tick of a clock form a blanket of familiar noise. The brain reads as nothing has changed. These are not silent sounds. They are the opposite of silence. They are the sonic signature of a functioning, familiar environment. The refrigerator hums at a constant frequency. The clock ticks at a constant interval. The house settles with quiet. Irregular creaks that have become so expected they are no longer noticed. Together, these sounds form what psychoacousticians call the soundscape of home. Research on background noise and sleep has shown that familiar, constant sounds do not disrupt sleep. They facilitate it. The brain uses them as a baseline against which to detect change. When the soundscape is consistent, the auditory system lowers its sensitivity, and the sleeping brain receives fewer arousal signals. Imagine a tapestry woven from sound. The hum is the warp, the tick is the weft, and between them, the creaks and sighs of the house fill in the pattern, a pattern your brain has memorized so completely that it no longer sees the threads, only the whole. Perhaps you might notice the sounds of your own house right now. The quiet hum of something electrical, the distant tick of something mechanical, the soft, intermittent sounds that belong to no specific source, but belong, unmistakably, to home. And in that familiar tapestry, the brain wraps itself and sleeps. And right now, your brain is cataloging every signal in this room: the temperature, the texture, the sounds, the dark, and each one confirms what the body already suspects: this place is safe. 75 facts, 3/4 of the journey. And the scanner is still running, still sweeping, still checking, still rendering its quiet, 4 times per second verdict. But by now, the verdict is familiar. It has been the same for over an hour. Safe. 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 The temperature is right. The pressure on your skin is gentle and even. The sounds are constant and known. The darkness is total and warm. The voice is steady. The air is still. Every channel of input is delivering the same message. And the brain has long since stopped being surprised by it. Imagine a house where every room has been checked, every window has been closed, every door has been locked, and every light has been turned off, not in haste, but with care, one by one, room by room, until the entire house is still. Perhaps you might notice that your body is that house, and room by room, it has been closing down. The eyes have closed. The jaw has softened. The hands have uncurled. The shoulders have dropped. The breath has slowed. Each room checked and secure. And the last room, the room where you are now, is the quietest of all. It is the room at the center of the house. The room with the softest light. The room where, finally, there is nothing left to do. The architecture of shelter is complete, and within it, you are held. Sleep is the ultimate expression of safety. No organism on Earth sleeps unless it feels safe enough to do so. This is the fact that sits beneath all the others. Every creature that sleeps, from fruit flies to elephants, from dolphins to human beings, does so only when its nervous system has concluded that the conditions permit it. Sleep is not merely a biological need. It is a biological verdict, a declaration issued by the body to itself. The world is safe enough to leave for a while. Evolutionary biologists have long puzzled over the persistence of sleep, given its obvious vulnerability costs. The consensus, supported by research across hundreds of species, is that sleep is so essential to repair, memory consolidation, and immune function that evolution preserved it despite its risks, but only in contexts where safety could be established first. Imagine a kingdom where the gates close only when every scout has returned, every wall has been checked, and every road has been cleared. The closing of the gates is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of thorough, careful readiness. Sleep is the closing of those gates. Perhaps you might notice that your gates are already closing. The eyes have shut. The muscles have softened. The thoughts are moving slowly, like travelers returning home at the end of a long day. And the kingdom is ready. The scouts have returned. The roads are clear, and the gates are closing gently, one by one. The Latin word for security, securitas, literally means without care. Securitas, se, meaning without. Curitas, from cura, meaning care or worry. To be secure, in the oldest sense of the word, is to be free of concern, not vigilant, not guarded, not defended, simply without care. The Romans understood something that modern neuroscience has confirmed: true safety is not the presence of protection. It is the absence of worry. Philological research traces this etymology through centuries of usage, from Cicero's philosophical writings to medieval legal documents. In every era, securitas carried the same essential meaning, a state in which the mind could rest because no threat demanded its attention. Imagine the feeling of having nothing to worry about, not because every problem has been solved, but because every problem has agreed to wait until morning. The to-do list is still there. The world is still turning. But tonight, none of it requires your attention. Perhaps you might notice that this is what your nervous system has been building toward all evening. Not a fortress, not a defense. Just this, a state without care. a state where the mind can set down its burdens, the way you set down a heavy bag after a long walk, and the bag is down, and the shoulders are light, and the word for what you feel is securitas. When you feel safe, your brain waves naturally shift from fast beta to calm alpha to drowsy theta, the progression towards sleep. The electrical activity of the brain follows a predictable pattern as safety deepens. In the alert, waking state, beta waves dominate fast, irregular, and attentive. As relaxation begins, alpha waves emerge slower, more rhythmic, the signature of calm wakefulness. And as drowsiness arrives, theta waves take over slow, rolling oscillations that mark the threshold of sleep. EEG research has mapped this transition with extraordinary precision, showing that the shift from beta to alpha to theta correlates directly with decreasing sympathetic arousal and increasing parasympathetic dominance. The brainwave progression is not something you control. It is something that happens to you when the conditions are right. Imagine the surface of a lake as the wind dies down. First, there are whitecaps, sharp, fast, and chaotic. Then the whitecaps smooth into long, rolling swells. And finally, the swells flatten into a mirror still, reflective, and perfectly calm. Perhaps you might notice where you are on that lake right now. The whitecaps are gone. The swells are gentling. And somewhere ahead, the mirror waits. You do not need to reach it. It is reaching you. Alpha waves, the rhythm of calm wakefulness, are the brain's way of saying present, but not worried. Alpha waves oscillate at approximately 8 to 12 cycles per second. They are the frequency of meditation, of daydreaming, of the pleasant, unfocused awareness that comes when the mind has nothing pressing to attend to. They are generated primarily in the posterior regions of the brain and are most prominent when the eyes are closed. Neurofeedback researchers have spent decades studying alpha waves as markers of relaxation. Sustained alpha activity is associated with reduced anxiety, improved emotional regulation, and enhanced creative thinking. It is the brain in idle mode, not off, not working, just gently turning over. Imagine a cat sitting in a sunny window, eyes half closed, ears occasionally swiveling toward a sound, then returning to rest. Not asleep, but not alert either. Just present, just aware, just quietly being. Perhaps you might notice that your own awareness has that quality right now. Not focused, not drifting, but somewhere in between. A soft attention that takes in the words without grasping at them. And that softness is alpha, the brain's own way of saying, I am here, and I am at peace. Theta waves, the rhythm of light sleep, are the brain's way of saying the guard can stand down. Theta waves are slower still, 4 to 8 cycles per second. They emerge in the transitional zone between wakefulness and sleep, a state called hypnagogia. In this state, thoughts become images. Logic loosens its grip, and the boundary between the waking world and the dreaming world becomes thin and permeable. Sleep researchers describe theta as the gateway frequency, the oscillation that marks the brain's official transition from one mode of consciousness to another. Once theta dominates, the cortex begins to withdraw from external stimuli, and the thalamic gate begins to close. Imagine a theater where the house lights are dimming. The audience is still there, still aware, but the room is growing dark. and the stage is beginning to glow with something new. The show is about to begin, not the show of the waking world, but the show of the dreaming one. Perhaps you might notice the edges of your thoughts beginning to blur, a face appearing from nowhere, a color with no name, a feeling without a source. These are the first whispers of Theta, the guard standing down, the gate beginning to open. And beyond the gate, something extraordinary waits. But that is not a story for tonight. Tonight, you only need to reach the gate, and perhaps you are already there. The thalamus acts as a sensory gate during sleep, filtering input and allowing through only signals that might indicate danger. During wakefulness, the thalamus relays sensory information from the eyes, ears, and skin to the cortex for processing. But during sleep, it changes its behavior dramatically. It begins to block most incoming signals, allowing the cortex to disengage from the external world. Only signals that the thalamus classifies as potentially threatening, a loud noise, a sudden change in temperature, a significant deviation from the soundscape are allowed through. Thalamic gating research using EEG and functional MRI has shown that sleep spindles, brief bursts of neural activity generated by the thalamus, serve as the mechanism for this sensory blockade. Each spindle represents a moment of active filtering, a pulse of protection from the outside world. Imagine a gentle doorkeeper who stands at the entrance to a quiet room. Most visitors are turned away with a kind word, "Not tonight." Only the most urgent messages are allowed through, and even then, they are delivered as whispers. Perhaps you might notice how little of the outside world is reaching you right now. The sounds are distant. The room feels far away. The words you are hearing are arriving not through effort but through permission, the thalamus, opening the door just enough to let them in. And soon, even the door will close, and the room will be yours alone. This is why a parent can sleep through a thunderstorm but wake instantly at the sound of a child's soft cry. The thalamic gate is not a simple on-off switch. It is intelligent. It has been calibrated by experience, emotion, and biological priority. It knows that thunder is loud but predictable, and therefore not threatening. It knows that a child's cry is soft but unpredictable, and therefore requires immediate attention. The gate does not filter by volume. It filters by meaning. Research on selective auditory processing during sleep has confirmed that the sleeping brain continues to evaluate sounds for emotional and survival relevance. Personally meaningful stimuli, a child's voice, the sound of one's own name, are processed with priority, even during deep sleep stages. Imagine a net cast across a river. The current flows through, carrying leaves and twigs and ordinary debris. The net lets all of this pass. But if something unusual comes along, something that shines, something that moves against the current, the net holds it. The filter is not blind. It is wise. Perhaps you might notice a quiet trust forming. A trust that if anything in your environment truly needed your attention, your brain would know. You do not need to stay alert. The gate is there. The filter is working, and it has been working flawlessly since the first night of your life. And so you can let go, completely. The gatekeeper will handle the rest. Elephants in the wild sleep only 2 hours per night because their environment rarely feels fully safe. 2 hours. That is all the sleep the largest land animal on Earth can afford. Researchers tracking wild elephants in Kenya using accelerometers and GPS found that they sleep in brief episodes, rarely lying down, and often standing with their weight shifting from leg to leg. The savanna is vast and open. Predators are present. And the herd must keep moving. Full. Deep rest is a luxury the elephant seldom receives. This finding, published in the journal PLOS One, stands in contrast to elephants in protected sanctuaries, who sleep 4 to 6 hours per night, double or triple the wild average. The difference is not biology, it is safety. When the threat is removed, the sleep returns. Imagine carrying the weight of the world's largest land body through an open landscape where lions move in the dark. 2 hours is all the nervous system can spare. 2 hours is all the safety the savanna allows. Perhaps you might notice, by contrast, the extraordinary abundance of your own safety tonight. No savanna, no predators, no need to keep moving, just a bed, and a room, and a darkness that asks nothing of you. And in that abundance, the body takes what the elephant cannot: a full night, a deep rest, the privilege of feeling completely, utterly safe. House cats sleep up to 16 hours a day, a testament to how completely safe they feel in your home. 16 hours, 2/3 of their lives spent in sleep or near sleep. The domestic cat is perhaps the most extravagantly rested creature on the planet. And the reason is simple. It has achieved what few animals in the wild ever achieve. Total, sustained, uninterrupted safety. No predators, no competition, no uncertainty about where the next meal will come from. The nervous system, with nothing left to scan for, simply shuts down and rests. Veterinary sleep research has shown that indoor cats spend approximately 40% of their sleep in deep, slow-wave stages, the most restorative form of sleep. Their vagal tone is consistently high, their cortisol levels consistently low. They are, in physiological terms, living in a permanent ventral vagal state. Imagine a creature so safe that it has forgotten what vigilance feels like. It sleeps on its back, belly exposed, the most vulnerable position possible, because it cannot imagine a reason not to. That is the depth of trust a house cat embodies. Perhaps you might notice that tonight, you, too, can lie in any position you choose. Back, side, stomach, it makes no difference. The room is safe in every direction. And in that freedom of position, a kind of animal trust, the trust of a creature that has forgotten how to be afraid. The practice of meditation activates the same ventral vagal state that prepares the body for deep sleep. Meditation and sleep are not the same thing, but they share a common neurological foundation. Both require the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. Both involve the quieting of the default mode network, the brain's inner narrator, and both depend on the ventral vagal state, the physiological platform of safety and rest. A meta-analysis published in JAMA Internal Medicine reviewed 47 clinical trials and found that mindfulness meditation significantly improved sleep quality, reduced insomnia symptoms, and decreased daytime fatigue. The mechanism, the researchers concluded, is the same one we have been exploring all evening: the cultivation of safety in the nervous system. Imagine sitting by a still pond at dawn. You are not trying to sleep, you are simply being, and in that being, the body enters the same state it enters at night. The breath slows, the heart quiets, the mind releases its grip. Meditation and sleep are two doors to the same room. Perhaps you might notice that what you are doing right now is closer to meditation than you realized. Lying still, breathing slowly, listening without grasping. The body does not distinguish between the two. It only knows that the conditions are met. And the room behind both doors is the same: quiet, still, and endlessly safe. Monks who have meditated for decades show extraordinary vagal tone. Their nervous systems are deeply calibrated for peace. Long-term meditators, particularly those in Tibetan Buddhist traditions, have been studied extensively by neuroscientists at institutions like the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The findings are remarkable. These individuals show vagal tone levels far exceeding population averages. Gamma wave activity, associated with compassion and equanimity, and cortical thickness in regions governing emotional regulation. Researcher Richard Davidson documented that experienced meditators could shift their nervous systems into the ventral vagal state within seconds, a feat that typically takes untrained individuals 15 to 20 minutes. The nervous system, it seems, can be trained like a muscle, and with enough practice, peace becomes the default state. Imagine a river that has been flowing in the same direction for so long that even when the wind changes, the water barely stirs. The current is that deep. The channel is that well-worn. Peace has become not an effort, but a habit. Perhaps you might notice that you do not need decades of practice for what is happening right now. The voice, the darkness, the warmth, the stillness, these are doing the work that meditation does, guiding the nervous system toward a state it already knows. And the state is arriving, not because you have trained for it, but because the conditions have invited it, and the body has accepted. The Japanese word onshin describes a settled, bone-deep peace, a state of having nothing left to fear. Anshin, an meaning peace, shin meaning heart or mind, a peaceful heart-mind, a state in which the deepest layers of the self have settled into stillness, not because every danger has been eliminated, but because the relationship to danger has changed. The fearful mind has quieted. What remains is not confidence, exactly, but something softer, a willingness to be still. In Japanese philosophy, anshin is often described as the fruit of spiritual practice, the state that arises when the practitioner has let go of the need to control outcomes. It is trust without an object, peace without a reason, safety that exists not because the world has been made safe, but because the heart has made its own peace with the world. Imagine standing in a garden after a storm. The branches are still wet, the ground still damp, but the sky has cleared, and the air smells of rain and earth and something clean. The storm may come again, but right now, it is over, and that is enough. Perhaps you might notice a quality of anshin in this moment, not the absence of worry, but the willingness to set it down, not the certainty that all is well, but the quiet decision to rest as though it is. And in that decision, a deep and unexpected peace. In many indigenous cultures, stories told at night serve the same function as this voice, a steady, familiar signal that all is well. Across the world, from Aboriginal Australian songlines to Navajo night chants, from West African griots to Inuit fireside tales, the practice of nighttime storytelling is universal. These stories are not told to inform or entertain. They are told to regulate the steady voice of the storyteller, the rhythmic structure of the narrative, the familiar cadence of a tale told many times before. All of it serves as a communal safety signal. The voice says, "We are together." The fire is burning. The night is being watched. Anthropological research has documented that communal storytelling before sleep reduces cortisol levels and promotes group cohesion, a phenomenon researchers call social thermoregulation. The story does not need to be believed. It simply needs to be heard. Imagine a circle of people around a fire. The flames are low, the stars are bright, and one voice is speaking slowly, rhythmically, telling a story that everyone already knows. The words are not the point. The voice is the point. The continuity is the point. Perhaps you might notice that this moment is not so different from that circle. A voice speaking in the dark, a story unfolding at the pace of breath, and you, listening, the way humans have listened for 100,000 years. And the fire is still burning, and the voice is still here. Repetition is itself a safety signal. The brain reads predictable patterns as evidence that nothing has changed and nothing is wrong. The brain is a prediction machine. It constantly generates expectations about what will happen next, and it compares those expectations against incoming data. When the prediction matches the reality, when the next word sounds like the one the brain expected, when the next breath follows the same rhythm as the last, the brain generates a small pulse of satisfaction and reduces its alertness. Predictability equals safety. Computational neuroscience models have shown that prediction error, the discrepancy between expectation and reality, is a primary driver of arousal. When prediction error is low, arousal drops. When prediction error reaches zero, the brain enters its most relaxed state. This is why repetition is so profoundly calming. Imagine the sound of waves on a beach. Each wave is slightly different, but the pattern is the same: swell, break, retreat, pose, swell, break, retreat, pause. The brain learns the pattern within seconds. And once it has, each repetition confirms what the brain already knows. Nothing has changed. Nothing is wrong. Perhaps you might notice that the rhythm of these facts has become predictable. A headline, an explanation, a metaphor, a relaxation cue, a poetic close. Over and over, the same gentle structure, carrying different words, but the same intention. And in that repetition, the deepest safety of all, the safety of knowing what comes next. This is why you can listen to the same story or the same music hundreds of times and still find comfort in it. The comfort of the familiar is not about the content. It is about the prediction. When you listen to a story you already know, the brain does not need to work to understand what comes next. It already knows. And in that knowing, it can relax completely, surrendering the effort of processing, releasing the tension of uncertainty, and sinking into the pure, effortless pleasure of recognition. Psychological research on the mere exposure effect and processing fluency has shown that repeated exposure to a stimulus not only increases liking, but decreases cognitive load. The brain processes familiar stimuli more efficiently, freeing resources for rest. Imagine hearing a melody you have loved since childhood. The first note arrives, and something in you softens before the second note has even played. The body remembers. The mind follows. And by the time the melody reaches its familiar peak, you are no longer listening. You are floating. Perhaps you might notice that the facts themselves have become less like new information and more like old friends. You may not remember the details, but the rhythm is familiar, the tone is known, and the comfort is deep. And in that comfort, the mind has permission to wander, to drift, to let the facts pass like clouds while the body does what it was always going to do. Your immune system reaches peak activity during deep sleep. The body heals only when it feels safe enough to lower its guard. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the immune system enters its most active phase. Cytokines, small proteins that coordinate the immune response, are released in elevated quantities. Natural killer cells increase their activity. Inflammatory markers are regulated. The body, freed from the metabolic demands of wakefulness and vigilance, redirects its energy toward repair and defense. Research published in the journal Sleep has shown that even a single night of sleep deprivation can reduce natural killer cell activity by up to 70%. The immune system, it turns out, is not simply weakened by poor sleep. It is dependent on the safety state that sleep represents. Imagine a garden tended only at night. The gardener waits until the house is quiet. The visitors have left, and the gates are closed. Only then do the careful, invisible repairs begin: pruning, watering, turning the soil, work that cannot be done in daylight, work that requires stillness. Perhaps you might notice that your body is preparing for that gardening right now. The stillness is gathering, the gates are closing, and somewhere inside, the gardener is picking up the tools. And all that is needed from you is what you are already giving: the safety of sleep, the stillness of trust, the darkness in which healing begins. Growth hormone is released primarily during deep sleep. The body repairs and grows only in the shelter of the night. Growth hormone essential for tissue repair, muscle recovery, bone maintenance, and cellular regeneration is released in its largest pulse during the first period of deep, slow-wave sleep, typically within the first 90 minutes of falling asleep. This pulsatile release is controlled by the hypothalamus and is suppressed by cortisol, which means it occurs only when the stress response has been fully deactivated. Endocrine research has confirmed that up to 75% of daily growth hormone secretion occurs during sleep. The body does not merely rest at night, it rebuilds. And it can only rebuild when the nervous system has given the all clear. Imagine a construction crew that works only in silence. The moment the city quiets, they emerge repairing roads, reinforcing walls, replacing worn tiles. By morning, everything looks the same, but everything has been tended to. The work happens in the hush. Perhaps you might notice that your body is approaching that hush. The silence before the building begins, the stillness before the growth hormone flows. You do not need to do anything to initiate this process. You only need to sleep. And sleep is closer than you think. The autonomic nervous system has been managing your safety since before you were born in the womb, surrounded by warmth and rhythm. The autonomic nervous system begins functioning well before birth. By the end of the first trimester, the fetal heart is already being regulated by the developing vagal system. The warmth of the amniotic fluid, the rhythm of the maternal heartbeat, the gentle pressure of the uterine walls, all of these are the first safety signals the nervous system ever processes. Fetal neurology research has shown that the fetus responds to auditory stimuli by the 23rd week, to changes in maternal stress hormones by the 20th week, and to tactile pressure even earlier. The nervous system is not just developing during gestation. It is already working, already scanning, already deciding safe. Imagine a small room made entirely of warmth. No light, no sound except a heartbeat, no sensation except gentle, even pressure on every surface of the skin. This was your first environment, and your nervous system remembers it, even now. Perhaps you might notice echoes of that environment tonight. The warmth of the blankets, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the gentle pressure of the mattress against your body, the dark, the stillness, the sense of being enclosed. And in those echoes, the oldest memory your body holds, the memory of a time when safety was total and rest was all there was. The sound of your mother's heartbeat was the first pattern your nervous system ever learned, and it learned that pattern means safe. Before language, before faces, before the concept of other existed, there was a heartbeat, 70 to 80 beats per minute, constant, rhythmic, unceasing. It was the first predictable pattern the developing brain encountered, and it imprinted deeply, not as a memory, but as a template, a baseline against which all future rhythms would be measured. Developmental neuroscience has shown that this early acoustic imprinting shapes the nervous system's response to rhythm throughout life. Adults who are exposed to heartbeat range rhythms show measurable parasympathetic activation, a response that can be traced back to this first, prenatal learning. Imagine a metronome set to 72 beats per minute. It is an unremarkable sound, but somewhere deep in your brainstem, it matches a template that was laid down before you had a name, and the match produces a feeling that has no words. Only a quality familiar, safe, home. Perhaps you might notice the rhythm of this voice, landing somewhere near that ancient tempo. Not fast, not slow, just steady, just the speed of a resting heart. And in that rhythm, the deepest part of you recognizes something it has known since before you were born. Sea otters hold hands while they sleep, forming rafts on the water, so they will not drift apart. Safety and connection. In the kelp forests of the Pacific coast, sea otters sleep floating on their backs, wrapped in strands of kelp to anchor themselves. But when kelp is unavailable, they reach out and hold each other's paws, forming floating rafts of connected bodies that rise and fall with the swell. The holding is functional, preventing the otters from drifting apart while they sleep. But it is also, perhaps, something more. Marine biologists have observed that otters in rafts show lower cortisol levels and longer sleep durations than solitary sleepers. The physical connection, paw to paw, body to body, appears to serve as a safety signal, a tactile confirmation that the group is intact. Imagine floating on a calm sea, the water lifting and lowering you with a gentle, breathing rhythm, and next to you, a hand, not gripping, not pulling, just there, a warm point of contact that says, I am here, we are together, you can sleep. Perhaps you might notice your own points of contact right now, the bed beneath you, the blankets over you, the pillow beside your face. You are held by many hands tonight, the hand of the mattress, the hand of the dark, the hand of a voice that has been here since the beginning. And like the otters, you will not drift away. Emperor penguins huddle together in Antarctic storms, rotating positions so that every individual gets time in the warm center, safety and community. In the harshest environment on Earth, emperor penguins survive by cooperating. When temperatures drop to -60 degrees Celsius and winds reach 200 kilometers per hour, the colony forms a tight huddle, thousands of bodies pressed together, sharing warmth, and the huddle moves, slowly, continuously. The outermost penguins rotate inward, and the innermost rotate outward, so that every individual takes a turn in the sheltered center. Thermal imaging research has shown that the temperature at the center of a penguin huddle can reach 37 degrees Celsius body temperature, even as the air outside drops to lethal levels. The huddle is a collective act of safety, a living architecture of warmth and trust. Imagine being drawn slowly, gently, from the outer edge of a circle toward its warm, still center. The wind fading with each step, the cold receding, the press of other bodies steady, warm, reliable, telling you without words, you are part of us. You are sheltered. Perhaps you might notice that you are already in the center. The wind cannot reach you here. The cold is outside, and you are in. The huddle has closed around you, the blankets, the dark, the voice, the night. And in the center, everything is still. You do not need to understand neuroception for it to work. You do not need to manage it. It runs right now, quietly, as it has your entire life. This is perhaps the most comforting fact of all. The system that has been keeping you safe since before you were born requires nothing from you. No attention, no effort, no understanding. It runs beneath your awareness, beneath your will, beneath even your dreams. It was there before you learned your name, and it will be there long after you have forgotten it. Neuroscience has confirmed that neuroception is a fully automatic, pre-conscious process. It cannot be overridden by thought, influenced by belief, or disrupted by intention. It simply runs as reliably as your heartbeat, as constantly as your breath. Imagine a clock that has been running since the day you were born. You have never wound it. You have never set it. You have never even looked at it. But it has never stopped. It has been keeping perfect time, all along, in a room you did not know existed. Perhaps you might notice the relief in that, the relief of knowing that the system does not need your help. It does not need your attention. It does not need you to stay awake to keep it running. You can let go completely. The clock will keep ticking. The scanner will keep scanning. The system will keep running. And you can rest. And tonight, its conclusion is simple. The room is dark. The air is still. The surface beneath you is soft. The voice you hear is calm. 100 facts. 100 small windows into the way your nervous system reads the world. And through each one, the same view: safety. The room has not changed. The voice has not changed. The darkness has not changed. And the scanner, completing its 4 per second sweep, has returned the same verdict each time. Safe, 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 safe. The temperature is gentle. The pressure is even. The sounds are familiar. The rhythm is slow. Every channel of input, visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, thermal, is delivering the same message. There is no conflict, no ambiguity, no need for further evaluation. Imagine a jury that has been deliberating for hours. One by one, each member has reached the same conclusion. And now, at last, the foreperson stands, and speaks the verdict. Not with drama, not with urgency, just with quiet, unanimous certainty. Perhaps you might notice that the verdict has already been delivered. Sometime during the last 100 facts, your body reached its conclusion. The deliberation is over. The evidence was overwhelming, and the verdict is safe. Every signal has been received. Every checkpoint has been passed. The scanner has completed its sweep. 99 facts. 99 gentle observations about a system you never knew was running. And now, at the end of its sweep, the scanner has nothing left to report. The environment has been evaluated. The body has been consulted. The autonomic, the somatic, the endocrine, the immune, every system has been polled, and every system has returned the same answer. All clear, all clear, all clear. The muscles are soft. The breath is slow. The heart is steady. The mind is quiet. The eyelids are heavy with the sweet, unearned weight of melatonin and theta waves, and the simple, animal pleasure of lying still in the dark. Imagine the last page of a very long book. The story has been told. The characters have arrived where they were always going. And the last sentence is not a surprise, but a confirmation the ending you knew was coming, delivered with the gentleness it deserves. Perhaps you might notice that this is that last page. The story of your brain's safety system, told across 100 quiet facts, is nearly finished. And the ending is simple. You are safe. You have always been safe. The system has always been working. And the result, the quiet, unanimous, unambiguous result is safety. You are safe. You are held. You can rest. 100. 100 facts about the way your brain scans for safety, the way your body responds to it, the way your environment provides it, and the way your nervous system, that ancient, tireless, extraordinary system processes it all without ever asking for your help. And tonight, that system has spoken, clearly, unanimously, without reservation. The room is safe. The body is safe. The mind is safe. The night is safe. There is nothing left to evaluate, nothing left to check, nothing left to wonder about. Just the quiet, settled certainty of a nervous system that has completed its work and found nothing to report but peace. Perhaps you might notice that there is nothing left to do, nothing left to hold, nothing left to understand. The facts have come and gone like gentle waves, and the shore is smooth, and the water is still, and you are lying on that shore, warm, safe, held by the oldest system you have, cradled by a darkness that has been saying the same thing all night. Safe, safe, safe. You can rest now. Imagine a lighthouse keeper. All day, the keeper has watched the horizon, checking every wave, counting every cloud, noting the color of the water, the direction of the wind, the movement of distant ships. The keeper's eyes have traveled from left to right and back again, thousands of times, scanning for anything that might require attention. But now, the day is over. The sea is calm. The ships have passed. The wind has dropped to nothing, and the horizon, that long, unbroken line between water and sky, is empty. Not a light, not a shadow, not a signal of any kind. And so the keeper climbs down from the watchroom, closes the shutters, dims the lamp, hangs the binoculars on the hook by the door, not because the ocean has disappeared, but because tonight there is nothing to warn against. Your neuroception is that keeper. All day, it has been watching, scanning the horizon of your environment, evaluating sounds, temperatures, faces, rhythms, checking and rechecking 4 times per second whether the world outside is safe. And now, after 100 facts, after 1,000 sweeps, after an evening of uninterrupted calm, the keeper has reached the same conclusion. The horizon is clear. There was never anything to fix tonight. Nothing to solve. Nothing to guard against. Just signals to receive from the darkness, from the warmth, from the weight of the blankets, and the steadiness of a voice that has been here since the beginning. And every signal said the same thing. Safe, safe, safe. So let the keeper rest. One last scan of the body, the face soft, expressionless, the muscles around the eyes completely released, the shoulders dropped, heavy, no longer holding anything up, the hands open, uncurled, fingers loose against the sheets, the chest rising and falling in a rhythm so slow it barely registers, the legs still, warm, sinking into the mattress as though the bed were made of something deeper than foam. Warmth spreading, settling, softening, and the keeper closes the last shutter, dims the last light, hangs up the last pair of binoculars. Sleep well. Your brain already knows the way. It has walked this path 1,000 times before, the path from wakefulness to alpha, from alpha to theta, from theta to the deep, slow delta waves of dreamless sleep. It does not need a map. It does not need your guidance. It only needs what it has already received, the evidence of safety. And the evidence, tonight, is overwhelming. The scanner will keep watch. It will continue its 4 per second sweep, all through the night, long after you have forgotten what vigilance feels like. If anything changes, a sound, a shift, a signal, the scanner will know, and it will wake you. Not roughly, not with panic, but gently, the way a parent wakes a child who has fallen asleep in the car. But that will not happen tonight. Tonight, the scanner has nothing to report. The keeper will stay at the tower. The lamp will burn low. The ocean will be calm. But you can rest. You have listened to 100 facts about the way your brain finds safety in the world. Perhaps you remember some of them. Perhaps you remember none. It does not matter. The facts were never meant to be remembered. They were meant to be felt. And your body has felt every one of them. The neuroception heard them and said safe. The vagus nerve heard them and slowed the heart. The pineal gland heard the darkness and released its quiet tide. The thalamus heard the calm and began to close its gates. And now, there is nothing left but this. A voice in the dark, saying goodnight. A body in a bed, saying yes. A nervous system, ancient and wise, saying, I will keep watch. And you, wherever you are, whoever you are, drifting now on the kindest tide, there is the tide of safety, carrying you gently, irresistibly, toward the shore of sleep. Good night. Good night. Good night.